Chapter 2073. Why isn't it hiding? Why isn't it hiding? The manic laughter of the stubborn donkey made everyone's expression turn grave. Yuan venerate Hanfei, the Kangar sect master, and the many cultivators of the Kangar sect who were hanging on the logs raised their heads and looked at the vortex above them with hopeful eyes. Yuan venerate Immortal Slayer's expression also became serious. The smile on Yuan venerate Demonic Corpse's face gradually disappeared. The Wang family disciples looked at each other and finally at Ning Qi. They were filled with confidence when they saw the faint smile on Ning Qi's face. Based on their understanding of Ning Qi wouldn't have let them appear here if he wasn't certain of victory. "Grandfather, is the Dao Yen Immortal Lord here?" "Shu, lower your voice. Let's just watch the show." "Mother, do you think Yuan venerate Beixian or the Dao Yen Immortal Lord is more powerful?" "Oh, this is a difficult question. Ask another one. Patriarch, should we run further away first? If the Dao Yen Immortal Lord and Yuan venerate Beixian fight, I'm afraid the shockwaves will kill us." "Alright, you run first then." "Oh, forget it, venerate Python. Do you think Yuan venerate Beixian is a match for the Dao Yen Immortal Lord? If he is no match for the Dao Yen Immortal Lord and is suppressed again, I'm afraid the Blood Abyssal race will be annihilated this time." Shi Yanxin, who was standing beside Venerate Shi, said in a low voice. She kept glancing at the vortex in the sky with a hint of worry in her eyes. Shi Wuming and the other supreme cultivators of the Blood Abyssal race stood behind the two of them and stared at the vortex in the sky. They were both excited and afraid. After all, the legendary ruler was about to descend. The future of the Blood Abyssal race was in Ning Qi's hands. If Ning Qi won, the Blood Abyssal race would become a top race in the central mainland. If Ning Qi lost, the Blood Abyssal race would become a stray dog. "Do you think Yuan venerate Beixian is worried?" Shi Yanxin asked calmly. Hearing this, Snake Blazing Heart looked at Ning Qi. Sure enough, she discovered that Ning Qi was leisurely looking at the whirlpool in the sky with a smile that was not a smile. "Even if Yuan venerate Beixian doesn't make a move today, I'm afraid the third Ming Prince will be able to exchange a few blows with the Dao Yen Immortal Lord," Shi Yanxin said calmly. "Him?" Shi Yanxin looked at the third Crown Prince, and recalled the scene of the third Crown Prince suppressing Yuan venerate Hanfei. The worry on her face gradually disappeared. Shi Yanxin was right. The Dao Yen Immortal Lord might not be able to gain an advantage over Ning Qi if he really came today. "Ning Beixian, you're dead meat. Ah, you're dead. When my master suppresses you, I will skin you alive and break your bones. I will torture you to death. Just you wait." The tough donkey laughed wildly and cursed at Ning Qi resentfully. Ning Qi crippled its cultivation this time, so it had already regarded Ning Qi as the person it hated the most in its life. All kinds of torturing methods emerged in its heart. It vowed to use these methods on Ning Qi one by one. Only then would it be able to vent its resentment. "Yuan venerate Beixian, do you want it?" Yuan venerate Devil Corpse glanced at Ning Qi and made a throat-slitting gesture. "Let him laugh for a while." Ning Qi smiled. Yuan venerate Devil Corpse smirked when he saw this and shot a mocking look at Tenek. Yuan venerate Hanfei, who happened to see this, was shocked. Why was Yuan venerate Devil Corpse laughing at this moment? Was he not afraid of the Dao Yen Immortal Lord? A light flashed beside Ning Qi and a figure appeared in front of everyone. The tough donkey shut its mouth in fear when it saw this figure. "Central Continent? Boss, you're back?" Little Six looked at Ning Qi with a hint of surprise in his eyes. "Yeah." Ning Qi nodded with a smile. "You weren't attacked by the demonic Qi, right?" Little Six scanned Ning Qi from head to toe and confirmed that Ning Qi's mind was the same as before. The third prince and the others looked at Little Six with a strange look in their eyes. "Of course not." Ning Qi chuckled. "But speaking of which, demonic Qi is indeed good for tempering one's physical body." Little Six had already sensed that the feeling Ning Qi gave him now was extremely terrifying. Even when he was at his peak, this kind of aura didn't seem like much. Little Six had a look of disbelief on his face. For the first time, he felt that he couldn't see through Ningqi at all. Boss, your cultivation base. Go all out? I can even kill a perfected demon human. This, Little Six was deeply shocked. A perfected demon human was equivalent to a perfected human immortal. How could he reach such a level in just a few decades? Little Six was attracted by the vortex in the sky after he recovered from his shock. It's that Daoyin fella, right? Little Six asked. How are you going to deal with him? Ningqi smiled. Little Six's eyes flashed. Deal with him? Beat him to death. This kind of ingrate traitor, he deserves to die. All right. Ningqi nodded with a smile. At that moment, the vortex in the sky was getting bigger and bigger, covering a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. Countless beings looked up at the sky in shock and horror. Soon, an incomparably huge figure seemed to appear in the vortex. It was faintly discernible, but the 9 underworld demon Venerate and the others knew that the Dao Yen Immortal Lord had arrived. Master, I'm here. Tenacious Donkey roared with all its might. Yuan Venerate Hanfei and Song Air also had a look of anticipation on their faces. Tens of millions of cultivators in the surroundings were looking at the incomparably huge figure. Some sky prides who worshipped the Dao Yen Immortal Lord were already half kneeling on the ground. The rulers of the various celestial dynasties, who were standing not far from Ningqi and the others, looked at each other and resisted the urge to kneel. Their lives were in Ningqi's hands. If they accidentally angered this devil, they might die on the spot. It would be useless even if the Dao Yen Immortal Lord took revenge for them. That fella is finally here. Yuan Venerate Slayer's eyes were filled with excitement as he clenched his fists. He couldn't wait. Apart from Ningqi and Little Six, he probably had the deepest enmity with the Dao Yen Immortal Lord. However, Yi, who was beside Alchemy Emperor Bodhi, was also looking at the Dao Yen Immortal Lord with a trace of excitement and reminiscence. Since ancient times, her sect had a sect rule to assassinate the Dao Yen Immortal Lord for generations. Only when the Dao Yen Immortal Lord died would this sect rule be dropped. Back then, she was also suppressed by the Dao Yen Immortal Lord because of this sect rule. Today, she believed that Ningqi would complete this sect rule for her. From now on, she would no longer have any burdens and could return to the original location of the sect to worship her ancestors. Soon, the Dao Yen Immortal Lord walked out of the vortex like an ancient god descending to the mortal world. The aura on his body was extremely terrifying, and he looked down on the world with supreme grace. Chapter 2074. Is that all you've got? The voice of the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor was mighty and mighty, exploding in everyone's ears. Such an attitude, such an appearance, it truly captivated many geniuses, and they viewed the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor as the strongest idol in their hearts. For example, Xiao Wei and the others, at this moment, when they looked at the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor, their eyes were filled with worship and respect. Make your move. Quickly suppress this kid. Many cultivators muttered to themselves in anticipation. Dao Yen, don't be arrogant today. Yuan Venerate North Mystic can crush you with one finger. You want to suppress us again? Dream on. Yuan Venerate Devil Corpse couldn't help but stand up and roar. Yuan Venerate Immortal Slayer smirked as he looked at the Dao Yen Immortal Lord. The Dao Yen Immortal Lord looked at the two of them and smiled. So you guys came out too. The third prince looked at the Dao Yen Immortal Lord with a strange expression. The aura of the Dao Yen Immortal Lord had indeed shocked him, but he was disappointed when he saw the Dao Yen Immortal Lord in person. How dare a mere early-stage demonic human act so arrogantly? He's really bored. He should have just crushed such an existence to death. He actually waited here for so many days for him. The third prince looked at Ningqi and cursed in his heart. However, he didn't dare say this in front of Ningqi. Otherwise, Ning Qi would definitely serve him. Ha ha ha, are you surprised? Yuan Venerate Devil Corpse laughed. Surprised? Maybe. The Dao Yen Immortal Lord smiled. Master, they crippled my cultivation. Cripple my cultivation. The tenacious donkey roared at the top of its lungs. Its eyes were completely red. The Dao Yen Immortal Lord looked at the tough donkey and tapped it gently. A ray of light instantly entered the tough donkey's body. Everyone realized that the tough donkey's aura was rising continuously and soon reached the Transcendence realm. Song Air wanted to roar a few times like the tough donkey, but he wasn't sure if the Dao Yen Immortal Lord would do the same to him. He was even more afraid that he would be killed by Ning Qi. After weighing the pros and cons, he chose to keep quiet. After the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor finished doing all this, his gaze descended onto Ning Qi. I was able to suppress you in the past, and I can still suppress you today. What exactly is the reason that you didn't find a place to hide and instead waited for me here? Do you really want to know? Ning Qi smiled. Yes, I really want to know. Dao Yen Immortal Emperor smiled. Ning Qi smiled as he tore through the sky. During this process, his body grew ceaselessly, and in the end, he was 300 meters tall as he looked at the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor from afar. When everyone saw this scene, they instantly held their breaths and became extremely nervous because a great battle was about to erupt. Come, suppress me and I will tell you. Ning Qi smiled. The Dao Yen Immortal Emperor glanced at Little Six, and a trace of suspicion flashed in the depths of his eyes. Ning Qi's current attitude was completely different from what he had imagined. Could it be that the Dragon Sovereign had given him some trump card, which was why he was so confident? However, the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor thought about it again. With his strength, no matter what trump card the other party had, it was impossible for the other party to defeat him in today's battle. With this thought in mind, the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor smiled and gently waved his hand. A suffocating aura instantly surged out. When the tens of millions of cultivators below felt this aura, those with lower cultivation bases directly spat out a mouthful of blood, while those with higher cultivation bases were shaken and felt dizzy. At the same time, a white light with a destructive aura landed on Ning Qi like lightning. What a joke! You want to hurt him with this kind of attack? Third Prince Ming shook his head with a smile and couldn't help but mock. Yuan Venerate Immortal Slayer and Yuan Venerate Devil Corpse also smiled when they heard this. Mysterious Truth Great Sage, Gu Miaoxian, and Yi Zifeng all had confident smiles on their faces as they looked at the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor with slight mockery. However, the others were different. Wang Lin, Fei Yuding, Alchemy Emperor Bodhi, Li Taiyan, Yi Wanjun, and the Sacred Concubine Cold Sky, Little Yuer, Zwillinger Niu Dezhuang, Dongfang Haojie, and the others who had yet to show themselves in the Wang family's territory all had a trace of worry in their eyes. Although they were also full of confidence in Ning Qi, the other party was the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor after all. The disciples of the Wang family, the disciples of the War God Temple, and the cultivators of the Blood Abyssal race didn't even dare to blink at this moment. They stared at Ning Qi nervously. Ha ha ha! Tenacious Donkey laughed crazily when it saw this scene. Bang! The white light landed on Ning Qi's body and created a green smoke. Then there was nothing else. Apart from a hole in Ning Qi's clothes, the skin under his clothes was unscathed and there were no injuries. Tenacious Donkey's laughter stopped abruptly as it stared at this scene with its mouth agape. After a full 3 breaths, the tens of millions of cultivators at the scene finally reacted. They took a deep breath in their hearts, and their eyes were filled with disbelief. The Netherworld Lord and the others were even more shocked. They knew the battle prowess of Dao Yen's Celestial Emperor better than ordinary masters of creation. That attack just now, no matter which one of them was hit, they definitely wouldn't have the chance to fight back and would die on the spot. However, such an attack only tore Ning Qi's clothes and didn't cause any harm to him? Could it be that this attack was an internal injury? Everyone guessed in their hearts. Other than this explanation, they couldn't think of any other explanation that could convince them. But right after, Ning Qi patted his chest and smiled at the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor. Is that all you can do? As soon as he said this, the faces of the Netherworld Demon Sovereign and the others instantly turned deathly pale. How did Ning Qi look like he had suffered an internal injury? He was completely unscathed. Dao Yen Immortal Emperor stared at Ning Qi in a daze. Then, he extended his hand and a white light broke out of his body. This time, the aura of the white light was even more terrifying than before. It landed on the same spot on Ning Qi's chest and didn't even break his skin. Up until this moment, Dao Yen Immortal Emperor, who had always seemed calm and confident, finally had a look of shock on his face. On the other side of the log, Yuan Venerate Hanfei and Tsang Er watched this scene in a daze. Their hearts seemed to have sunk into an abyss, and their faces were filled with despair. Bei, Yuan Venerate Bei Xian, actually withstood 2 attacks from Dao Yen Immortal Emperor? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Is this all a smokescreen? If you are seeing things, then my eyes are indeed seeing things because what I saw is exactly the same as what you saw. Yuan Venerate Bei Xian indeed withstood 2 attacks from Dao Yen Immortal Emperor, and it seems like he did it very easily. Grandfather, didn't you say that Dao Yen Immortal Emperor is the #1 expert of the Central Mainland and has already taken the second step? This Yuan Venerate Bei Xian is also the strongest supreme talent in the Central Mainland in history. Didn't I tell you before? No, then I'll tell you now. Alright, stop talking and look. Have you taken that step? Chapter 2075. At the end of one's tether. Why? The Dao Yen Immortal Emperor did not understand. He had bitterly wanted to take that step, yet he was unable to succeed. This fellow in front of him, a mere ant-like existence, actually seemed to have taken the second step in just a few short decades, and his cultivation had surpassed his. As far as the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor was concerned, all of this was definitely Little Six's doing, and this was also the reason why he resented Little Six. Little Six hadn't allowed him to head to the Celestial Clan's continent in the past, and now, Little Six had nurtured an existence whose cultivation far surpassed his own. He didn't understand why. I've said it before. You'll only know after you suppress me. Ning Qi smiled. Ha ha. Dao Yen Immortal Lord, hurry up and suppress Yuan Venerate Bei Xian. Didn't you just say that you can suppress us again if you can suppress us once? Yuan Venerate Devil Corpse laughed heartily. When the tens of millions of cultivators heard it, their expressions became extremely strange, and the way they looked at the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor also changed slightly. As for those geniuses who had worshipped the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor since they were young, they all looked at Ning Qi in disbelief. No matter how they thought about it, the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor had ruled over this world for so many years. How could an unknown fellow, who occasionally appeared a few times, become more and more terrifying, and this time, he was actually able to contend against the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor? From the beginning to the end, they were unwilling to believe this fact. All of them looked at the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor with encouraging gazes, hoping that the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor would be able to display his divine might and suppress Ning Qi. Yuan Venerate Devil Corpse's voice was very ear-piercing to Dao Yen. The smile on Ning Qi's face and the way Little Six was looking at him were like sharp swords that pierced his heart. A moment later, the aura of the Dao Yen Immortal Lord rose continuously. The Dao Yen Immortal Emperor is going to use his full strength. That's great. Xiao Wei and the others clenched their fists tightly as they looked at Dao Yen Celestial Emperor anxiously. Even Fu He, who was standing behind Ning Qi and the others, secretly revealed a trace of anticipation. After all, Ning Qi was his enemy. Although Ning Qi did not kill him and spared his life, he still hoped that Ning Qi would die. Is he going to use his full strength? I'm afraid this Azure Dragon continent might not be able to withstand the full strength of the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor. The expressions of the Netherworld Demon Sovereign and the others gradually became grave. Yuan Venerate Hanfei and Songer were horrified. They were definitely within the range of the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor's attack. If the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor didn't care, they might be killed by the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor before Ningqi killed them. Very quickly, the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor's aura rose to its peak, and a faint shadow appeared behind him. At the same time, thousands of miles away, Meng Tianshu stood on top of a mountain peak, looking at the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor and Ningqi. His eyes narrowed slightly, looking at the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor with a trace of ridicule, and looking at Ningqi with a gaze filled with seriousness. Because the feeling Ningqi gave him now was exactly the same as the terrifying big shots he had seen in the Netherworld. In fact, it was even more than that. I didn't expect this kid to reach such a height. Immortal prison, that must be the legendary Devil Continent. Perhaps I will finally have the chance to avenge that enmity. King Tsulua, you definitely didn't expect that such an existence would appear in the Central Continent, right? The corners of Meng Tianshu's mouth curled up slightly as a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. That memory was simply unbearable. It was also because of the existence that he wanted to kill at all times that he had used all sorts of methods to escape to the Central Continent. Die. After the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor's aura rose to the peak, he suddenly roared. In an instant, the surrounding spirit energy and air were sucked dry, and all the cultivators could not breathe. However, they were cultivators after all, and it was fine even if they did not breathe for a while. Everyone looked at the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor nervously, and after the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor roared, the shadow behind him transformed into a huge dragon. At the same time, his original body gradually turned into a star and fused into the body of the huge dragon. This huge dragon was countless miles long, and its entire body was covered in golden armor. The layers of scales all stood up at this moment, like a surging wave. At this moment, the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor's aura was already 2 to 3 times stronger than before. The flaming dragon head directly reached in front of Ningqi and bit him. What? When the surrounding cultivators saw this scene, they were stunned on the spot. Only a few people were not shocked, while the rest of the cultivators fell into deep shock, because this was the first time they knew that the true body of the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor was actually a dragon. Among the tens of millions of cultivators present, there were many cultivators from the dragon race. They were even more shocked than the cultivators from the human race. They had not expected that the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor, who had ruled this world for so many years, would have the same origin as them and have the bloodline of the dragon race. Oh, this is more like it. He should have the combat strength of an early-stage human demon. However, he is also the weakest among the early-stage human demons. The third Prince Ming said indifferently. Yuan Venerate Immortal Slayer and Yuan Venerate Devil Corpse looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. They had not expected the true strength of the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor to be this strong. Originally, the two of them had thought that their decades of cultivation in the immortal prison would be enough for them to contend against the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor. Even if they were no match for him, they would not be instantly suppressed like before. However, it seemed like their guess was wrong. The two of them together were still not a match for the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor. The two incomparably large dragon eyes revealed a trace of hatred and monstrous anger. The Dao Yen Celestial Emperor's mouth had already completely enveloped Ningqi. In the next moment, it closed fiercely. The Dao Yen Celestial Emperor wants to swallow Yuan Venerate North Mystic alive. Xiao Wuye and the others were so excited that their palms were sweating. The disciples of the Wang family, the disciples of the War God Hall, and the cultivators of the Blood Abyssal race were also extremely nervous at this moment. In less than a breath's time, the Tao Yen Celestial Emperor's mouth had already closed. However, there was a trace of shock and disbelief in his incomparably large dragon eyes. How was this possible? Even if the other party's cultivation had improved greatly in the past few decades, it was impossible for him to be stronger than the current him. The sharp dragon teeth landed on Ning Qi's head and the soles of his feet, but they were unable to penetrate any further. No matter how much strength the Tao Yen Immortal Emperor used, he was unable to bite Ning Qi to pieces. This kind of terrifying physical strength finally made him feel a trace of fear. Have you exhausted your limited abilities? Chapter 2076. Chapter 2076. Chapter 2076. North Mystic Immortal Emperor. Hiss gasps could be heard from the tens of millions of cultivators present. This scene was truly shocking. Before they could recover from their shock, Ning Qi grabbed the Tao Yen Celestial Emperor's mouth and threw him to the ground. The huge dragon body was smashed to the ground without any resistance, causing the earth to tremble and shake. At the same time, a mushroom cloud rose. Several battleships that were slightly closer were affected by the aftermath and turned into powder. The cultivators on the battleships didn't even have time to scream before they died on the spot. Not even ashes were left. Master, Tenex stared blankly at this scene. Why was the Tao Yen Immortal Emperor, who was invincible in its heart, in such a sorry state in Ning Qi's hands? Yuan Venerate Hanfei and Songer were already in deep despair. They clearly knew that the outcome of today's battle was already set in stone. The Tao Yen Celestial Lord could no longer suppress Ning Qi because Ning Qi's cultivation and combat strength had far surpassed the Tao Yen Celestial Lord's. In just a few short decades, the positions of the two had changed. Ning Qi had become the Tao Evolution Immortal Emperor from several decades ago, and the Tao Evolution Immortal Emperor had become the Ning Qi from several decades ago. A wave of cheers exploded out from the Wang family, while the 9 Netherworld Demon Sovereign and the others were speechless. Words were useless and could not express the shock in their hearts. A bright light flashed in Wang Zhong's eyes, and he suddenly flew towards the north. No one knew what he was going to do, but not long after, they saw a huge log that was dozens of times thicker than any of the logs in the area being carried by Wang Zhong, and with a loud bang, it stabbed into the ground. Just how big was the body of such a huge log? Who was this log for? When everyone saw this scene, their minds were filled with a myriad of thoughts. Isn't that the World Tree? In the north, Patriarch Wang Zhong actually chopped down the World Tree that was about to become a spirit? Oh, it's a pity. That World Tree will probably be able to transform in another 100,000 years. At that time, it won't have to cultivate from scratch like us. Once it transforms, it will be at least a Dharma manifestation cultivator. Even before it transforms, its branches can be used for refining weapons or even medicine. There were a few powerful demons guarding this world tree, but they were chopped down by Patriarch Wang Zhong. Don't tell me this world tree is prepared for that person. It should be, haha. The disciples of the Wang family looked at each other, then looked at Ning Qi with anticipation. Ning Qi did not give the Tao Yen Celestial Emperor time to react. Under the series of attacks, everyone saw that the Tao Yen Celestial Emperor was like a harmless child in front of Ning Qi. He was constantly being swung around by Ning Qi, and every swing caused the earth to shake, causing their hearts to turn cold. After 10 minutes, the Tao Yen Immortal Emperor's figure suddenly shrunk and returned to his human form. Ning Qi slowly walked in front of the Tao Yen Immortal Emperor, looked down at him, and said indifferently, "Do you still have the strength to stand up?" The Tao Yen Immortal Emperor, who was majestic just a moment ago, could not even open his eyes at this moment. The aura on his body had also become extremely weak. Everyone was horrified to discover that an incomparably large bloody hole had appeared on the Tao Yen Immortal Emperor's stomach. The aura of the Tao Yen Immortal Emperor. It seems to have become even weaker than mine? Not only that, he can't even compare to me. Very quickly, some cultivators discovered that the aura on the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor's body was already as weak as an ant, not even comparable to the Do Dan realm. The Dao Yen Immortal Emperor's cultivation. It's been crippled. The 9 serenities, Devil Sovereign, and the rest sucked in a breath of cold air. Their expressions were extremely complicated. After today, the central continent would probably change dynasties. The person who ruled the central continent was no longer the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor, but the 9 serenities, Devil Sovereign, and the rest looked at Ning Qi in unison. Their eyes revealed a trace of respect, mixed with a trace of faint fear. You crippled my cultivation? After a moment of silence, the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor slowly opened his eyes and said with a hoarse voice. The resentment in his eyes was not concealed at all. That's right. Your cultivation was given to you by Little Six back then. I just took it back for him. Ning Qi smiled. Little Six appeared beside Ning Qi and looked at the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor indifferently. Ingrate, have you ever thought that you would have such a day? Dragon Sovereign, everything that happened in the past was forced by you. If it wasn't for the fact that you were afraid that my cultivation would surpass yours, why would you stop me? Those who block my path will be killed without mercy. The Dao Yen Immortal Emperor clenched his teeth and stared at Little Six. The killing intent in his eyes did not weaken in the slightest. Seeing that, Little Six could not help but shake his head and say to Ning Qi, Boss, this person has already gone berserk. Ning Qi laughed, then let him wake up for a while and reflect on his actions. With that, he reached out his hand and grabbed at the air. The Dao Yen Immortal Emperor gradually rose into the air and flew towards Wang Zhong like an arrow. Wang Zhong excitedly caught the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor, but did not hang him up immediately. Instead, he lowered his head and sized him up. The Dao Yen Immortal Emperor is only SOSO. How can it be good to offend the Beixian ancestor? Wang Zhong laughed mockingly, then hung the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor on the gigantic world tree. Compared to the others, the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor's treatment was the best, but it was also the most eye-catching. Even from thousands of miles away, one could clearly see the world tree and the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor hanging on it. There was a trace of humiliation in the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor's eyes. Once upon a time, he was arrogant in this world. No matter who saw him, they had to be respectful and call him the Immortal Emperor. Now, his cultivation had been crippled, and he was hung on a pillar in shame for the tens of millions of cultivators present to see. The Dao Yen Immortal Emperor felt a sweetness in his throat before he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. Tenacious Donkey's body began to tremble when it saw this scene. It looked at Little Six and Ning Qi in fear. As for Yuan Venerate Hanfei and Song Er, they lowered their heads in silence. They were praying in their hearts, hoping that Ning Qi would let them go. It did not matter if their cultivation was crippled. With their abilities they might have a chance to cultivate again. However, if they lost their lives, everything would be over. Greetings, North Mystic Immortal Emperor. The 9 Nether Demon Venerate suddenly cupped his hands and said loudly. His voice was mighty and spread throughout the entire place. 6 paths and the others hurriedly followed. Following that, the perfected immortals, the cultivators they brought, and the cultivators of the other forces also cupped their hands and bowed to Ning Qi. Greetings, North Mystic Immortal Emperor. The voices of over 10 million cultivators were extraordinary, and they spread to every corner of the Azure Dragon continent. Those with low cultivation levels that didn't dare to come all raised their heads and looked in the direction of the Wang family's ancestral city in shock. North Mystic Immortal Emperor? Could it be that the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor was defeated? Chapter 2077. Chapter 2077. Chapter 2077 I Can Lead the Way. Is that the Tao Yen Celestial Lord? It should be him. His aura is very weak and his cultivation has been crippled by the North Mystic Yuan Venerate. He's even weaker than you and I, Shu. It's the North Mystic Celestial Lord now, not the North Mystic Yuan Venerate. If the disciples of the Wang family hear what you said, they might hang you up there too. That's right, that's right. Batch after batch of cultivators arrived. Among them were cultivators from the 300 celestial dynasties. Even the celestial kings who were in charge of the various important departments of the Tao Yen celestial city arrived one after another. All the cultivators stood outside the Wang family's ancestral city and looked at the Tao Yen celestial lord with complicated expressions. The Tao Yen celestial lord's eyes were closed, but his eyelids were trembling slightly. Everyone knew that he was still conscious. The Wang family's land. In the main hall, the Abyss Devil Venerate and the other lords of the celestial dynasties stood respectfully on both sides of the main hall. Ning Qi sat in the middle of the main seat and looked at everyone calmly. Do you remember what I said just now? Ning Qi said calmly. Don't worry, North Mystic Celestial Lord. I will definitely deal with this matter as soon as I return to the central mainland. The Abyss Devil Venerate said respectfully. All right, I hope you won't disappoint me. Ning Qi smiled. The Abyss Devil Venerate and the others looked extremely solemn. What a joke. How could they still dare to disobey at this stage? Then, under the leadership of the Abyss Devil Venerate and the others, the lords of the celestial dynasties left the main hall and the Wang family's ancestral city and headed towards the central mainland. This time, all of them had an extremely important mission, which was to eliminate the direct subordinates of the Tao Yen Celestial Lord. At the same time, they had to announce that from now on, there would be no more enlightened immortals in the central mainland. There would be a North Mystic Celestial Capital, and the territory of the North Mystic Celestial Capital would be the entire Green Dragon mainland. Not long after the Abyss Devil Venerate and the others left, a figure slowly walked into the main hall. Ning Qi looked at the figure with a faint smile and said, Perfected Immortal Underworld Tao, long time no see. Meng Tianshu cupped his hands at Ning Qi and sighed. It has only been a few decades and the North Mystic Celestial Lord's strength has reached such a level. Even that Tao Yen couldn't take the Celestial Lord's attack. I'm impressed. He recalled the first time he met Ning Qi in the deer-chasing Holy Land. At that time, Ning Qi wasn't even a match for Feng Wudao, but his alchemy skills were a notch higher than Feng Wudao's. His impression of Ning Qi also stopped there. After that, he met Ning Qi several times, and each time, his eyes would brighten. Ning Qi's strength continued to rise again and again, but he always felt that he could suppress Ning Qi. It wasn't until decades ago that he knew that Ning Qi's combat power had far surpassed his. Now, decades later, he was sure that Ning Qi had taken the second step. Meng Tianshu came from the underworld. It was a strange world. The experts there were not much inferior to those in the celestial land. He had seen countless existences who had taken the second step. Speaking of which, even the Tao Yen Celestial Emperor could not compare to him. The feeling that Ning Qi gave him was no weaker than that of the Quril King who had been constantly chasing after him. This was also the reason why he had shown himself today. Haha, perfected immortal underworld Tao, you must be joking. I wonder why you're here today. Are you here to catch up with me? Ning Qi smiled. Meng Tianshu's face turned solemn. I'm here today to ask the Celestial Lord when to go to the underworld. Maybe I can lead the way. You can lead the way? Ning Qi's eyes flickered slightly. He had already determined that Meng Tianshu had come from the underworld. Evil Shura, who had also come from the underworld, hated the underworld to the extreme and would rather die than go back. Meng Tianshu was willing to lead the way for him? There must be some other reason. Reason? Ning Qi said. I used to be the prince of the underworld's first heavenly wheel sea domains, underworld. Later, because I offended someone from one of the 8 major families, the underworld was destroyed. I spent a lot of effort to possess this physical body, and I'm struggling to survive in the central mainland. If the North Mystic Celestial Lord is willing to avenge me, I can lead the way wherever you want to go. Meng Tianshu looked at Ningqi and said. Ningqi looked at Meng Tianshu. He had learned from Demon Yi about the rough division of forces in the underworld. The underworld was divided into 9 heavens. The 9 heavens were the strongest and the first heavens were the weakest. In the first heavens, the cultivators of the 8 great families were the strongest. Among them, the strongest cultivator of the 8 great families was known as the Underworld Emperor. He was in charge of the first heavens and was responsible for searching for souls in places like the central mainland. Therefore, he was sure that Wang Shui's soul was most likely in the first heavens. Who do you think is stronger between your Qiu family and me? Ningqi said. Of course, the North Mystic Celestial Lord is stronger. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. Meng Tianshu said confidently. How are the cultivators of the underworld divided? How can you be sure that I'm stronger than your Qiu family? Ningqi smiled. Meng Tianshu's lips moved slightly. Not long after, Ningqi's eyes flashed with a hint of realization. He believed Meng Tianshu's words this time around. While the abyssal world was divided into 9 layers of heaven, each layer of heaven was not as easy as Ningqi had imagined it to be. It was as difficult as traveling from the central continent to the immortals' continent. All the cultivators of the abyssal world in the first layer of heaven wanted to go to the second layer of heaven, but unless they reached a certain level of strength, the cultivators of the abyssal world in the second layer of heaven would come down to receive them. There was no other way to go to the second layer of heaven. This was equivalent to 9 independent regions. Although it was called the 9 heavens of the underworld, in fact, there was no close relationship between them. It could be said that there were 9 underworlds, and the underworld that Meng Tianshu was in was the weakest. Experts at the Do-Dan realm, Eternal Life realm, Transcendence realm, and Creator realm would have their souls searched by the cultivators of the first heavens after they died. Stronger existences would need to be searched by the cultivators of the second heavens of the underworld. Therefore, the cultivators of the first heavens of the underworld were the busiest. The existences with lower cultivation were under the control of the heavenly Tao law at all times. They constantly went to different places to search for souls. Only those with higher cultivation could obtain a moment of peace. This was also the reason why countless cultivators of the first heavens of the underworld wanted to go to the second heavens or even the third heavens. At that level, the targets they searched for souls were extremely strong and would not die so easily. They only searched for souls once every few years or even decades. This way they would have enough time to cultivate. Chapter 2078. Frigid Sky. Holy Mother, this is good news. If the strongest person in the first heaven of the underworld is equivalent to a human devil full circle, with my cultivation, I shouldn't encounter too much danger in the first heaven of the underworld. The underworld cultivator who took Wang Shui's soul seems to be at most equivalent to an early-stage human devil. With Meng Tianshu leading the way, this trip to the underworld will indeed save me a lot of time. North Mystic Celestial Lord, my enemy is from one of the 8 major families, Wan Luo. He is known as the Wan Luo King in the Luanxi region and is at the mid-stage of the Nether State. The Celestial Lord's current strength is at least equivalent to the late stage of the Nether State, right? It should not be a problem for the Celestial Lord. Meng Tianshu looked at Ningqi nervously. This was his best chance for revenge. If Ningqi didn't agree, he didn't know how many years it would take for him to kill the Qiruluo king and take revenge. Perhaps he might not even have the chance to do so in this lifetime. After all, the underworld Dao Empire could only be considered an upper-middle power in the revolving sea region. It couldn't even be considered a third-rate power in the entire first-level heaven. His father, the underworld Tao Great Emperor, had only been at the initial nether grade, and his strength was at most equivalent to Yuan Venerate Hanfei's level in the central mainland. This was the speed of his cultivation in the first heaven of the underworld. Now that he was in the central mainland, his cultivation speed was dozens of times slower than before. Even if he recovered to his peak, it would at least take tens of thousands of years or even hundreds of thousands of years to break through to the midstage of the nether state. Perhaps he would not be able to achieve this goal until his lifespan was exhausted. All right, I promise you. Lead the way and find Wang Shui's soul. I will help you take revenge. Ning Qi smiled. There was a hint of joy in Meng Tianshu's eyes, and he said in a low voice, "No problem. All the souls found in the first-fold heaven are registered in the Samsara temple. When the time comes, the immortal emperor will go with me to check, and we will definitely find them." Meng Tianshu paused and asked expectantly, "When can we leave?" "There is no hurry. There are still some things to take care of in the central mainland. I will go with you after I get rid of these worries." Ning Qi smiled. Meng Tianshu nodded. Since Ning Qi had already agreed, he knew that Ning Qi was not a person who would go back on his word. He had waited for so many years, so there was no need to be impatient. In the central continent, the various celestial dynasties and billions of living beings received the news almost at the same time. The Tao Evolution Celestial Lord had been suppressed by the North Mystic Yuan Venerate. From that moment on, there would no longer be a Tao Evolution Celestial Lord in the central continent. The Development Celestial Land and the Tao Evolution Celestial City would be razed to the ground. The direct subordinates of the Tao Evolution Celestial Lord would either surrender or be killed one by one. From that day on, all the cultivators knew that the Green Dragon continent had become the North Mystic Celestial Capital and the North Mystic Celestial Lord's palace. Countless cultivators rushed to the North Mystic Immortal Capital too. Even though they were celestial emperors, they and the celestial, they could not was they I Emperor North, a Emperor and World, one a Mystic, one and God. The North Mystic Immortal Capital would be the new center of the central mainland. Wang Zhong suggested that they hold a proper ceremony to let everyone admire Ning Qi's divine appearance. This suggestion was approved by everyone, and Ning Qi agreed when the sacred concubine agreed. However, he left all these trivial matters to the sacred concubine, while Ning Qi took the third prince and flew towards the 9 desolations. Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu was still a hidden danger. If he wasn't eliminated, the disciples of the War God Hall and the Wang family might also be infected by the soul-devouring worms in the future. After all, it was a species from the immortal race's mainland. No one in the central mainland could resist it except Ning Qi. The Wang family. In the conference hall, Dongfang Haojia, the sacred concubine, and everyone else who was closest to Ning Qi had gathered here. The title of the North Mystic Patriarch has been confirmed. It will be the North Mystic Immortal Lord. However, does anyone have any opinions on the title of the Madam? Because of Wang Zhong's special relationship with Ning Qi, he was the only cultivator from the Wang family who could appear here besides great sage Xianzhen, Wang Lin, and Fei Yuding. Everyone's eyes fell on the sacred concubine. She was Ning Qi's official wife. Now that Ning Qi had become the North Mystic Immortal Lord, the sacred concubine naturally had to have a title. Little Yuer and Zhuoling were very excited. They suggested a few titles on the spot and looked at the crowd expectantly. Everyone had a strange expression. These titles were too childish. The 2 women exchanged glances and curled their lips, thinking that these guys had no taste. The sacred concubine also couldn't help but smile at the 2 women. "What do you think, Sacred Mother Cold Sky?" Venerable Shilu suddenly asked. Everyone was a little surprised, as Shi Lu and Venerable Python rarely participated in meetings and rarely raised their own opinions. She was an extremely cold woman, and today she suddenly raised this title. Everyone looked at each other and muttered in their hearts. After that, Wang Zhong and the others revealed expressions of satisfaction. Sacred Mother Cold Sky was indeed a stable title. It also let people know that she was Ning Qi's wife and the mother of all life in the world. I think this title is not bad. Wang Zhong nodded. Xuanzhen Great Sage and Gu Miaoxian exchanged glances and nodded in agreement. Seconded. Sacred Mother, the sacred concubine, frowned slightly. She felt that this title was a bit too heavy. What did she, Fang Lingming, have to be called the Sacred Mother by the world? Just as she was about to give her opinion, everyone seemed to have sensed her intention and immediately decided on this title. Even little Yer Anzua Ling felt that this title was not bad. They excitedly chattered in the sacred concubine's ears. Just as the former Wang clan's territory was in full swing preparing for Ning Qi's ascension ceremony, Ning Qi had already arrived at the 9 desolation regions with the third Prince Ming. On the way, no matter what dangers he encountered, he directly broke through them with force. Countless forbidden ruins that people didn't dare to enter were shattered by Ning Qi's fists and disappeared. When Ning Qi arrived at the 9 desolation regions, a straight path was left behind him. There were no forbidden techniques that could kill people on this path. In the future, the cultivators of the central mainland would no longer need to take a detour to reach the 9 desolation regions. The third Prince Ming stood behind Ning Qi with a bored expression. He felt a little sad when he thought about how many years he would have to stay in this place. This place needs demonic qi. If I stay here for too long, I'm afraid my cultivation will regress. Damn it, what is this guy trying to do? Chapter 2079. 9 Desolations Again. 9 Desolations Again. Ning Qi smiled and ignored the little tricks of the third Ming prince. Instead, he pointed at a few cultivators flying across the sky and asked calmly, "Do you think there's anything wrong with those people?" The third Ming prince was taken aback. He took a closer look and said, "There seem to be worms in their bodies?" "That's right. Go ahead. Kill all of them if you see them. Don't leave a single one alive." Ning Qi chuckled. The third Ming prince's face darkened. However, he nodded immediately when he saw the threat in Ning Qi's eyes and chased after those fellows. The 9 desolations were too big. Ning Qi might not be able to kill all the cultivators infected by the soul-devouring worms alone. Sky Fox Valley, Hu Qingzi, you've been on the run for so many years, yet you're still going to fall into my hands. Do you think anyone can save you now? Just tell me what I want to know. Otherwise, you'll be tortured by the sky flames day and night. A large group of heaven foxes surrounded the center of Heaven Fox Valley. There was a cast iron pillar there, and Hu Qingzi was chained to it. In front of her, Hu Yinin had a cold smile on her face, and her eyes were filled with mockery. Hu Yinin was Fairy Fox's younger sister. Ever since Fairy Fox was killed by Ning Qi, she took over Fairy Fox's position. Hu Qingzi had been captured for a long time, but she had something extremely important to the Sky Fox race. Hu Yinin had been instructed by Fox Venerable Ziwei to find out the whereabouts of this item. Before that, Hu Qingzi couldn't die. Therefore, Hu Yinin had been using all sorts of methods to torture Hu Qingzi for the past few years. Hu Yinin's aura had become extremely weak and her body was covered in blood. However, when she heard Hu Yinin's words, she opened her eyes and forced a smile. "Little fox, you will never know the whereabouts of that item in this lifetime." "Huh? Why does that old fox not dare to show herself and let you ask me? Is she afraid that my big brother will come back and kill all of you in one fell swoop?" Him? Hu Yinin sneered at Hu Qingzi. Yuan Venerate Beixian has already been imprisoned in the immortal prison by the Dao Yen, immortal emperor. Do you think he can still escape from the immortal prison? What wishful thinking! On the other hand, the heartless Fox Supreme lives up to his name. Even you, his only daughter, have been suppressed here for so many years without showing your face. Since you're unwilling to speak, then I'll serve you with heavenly fire. As soon as she finished speaking, a ball of fire erupted from the iron pillar and engulfed Hu Qingzi. A look of pain appeared on Hu Qingzi's face as she struggled in the flames. However, she did not let out a cry as she stared at Hu Yining. The Heavenly Fox tribe members nearby had gloating looks on their faces. They did not treat Hu Qing as one of their own. After all, Fox Supremacy Wang Qing had betrayed the Heavenly Fox tribe and walked together with a human cultivator. To the Heavenly Fox tribe, this was a humiliation that could not be washed away. Hu Qingzi, who had been born because of this, had naturally become a thorn in their side. If Fox Supremacy Ziwei hadn't wanted Hu Qingzi to reveal the whereabouts of that item, they would have sent her on her way a long time ago. After a few minutes, Hu Yining saw that Hu Qingzi's life force was getting weaker and weaker. With a thought, the flames on the pillar disappeared, and Hu Qingzi visibly relaxed. However, the corners of Hu Yining's mouth suddenly curled up. Without waiting for Hu Qingzi to catch her breath, the flames appeared once again. After repeating this a few times, Hu Yining finally withdrew the flames and smiled at Hu Qingzi. "Are you going to speak or not?" "I won't." Hu Qingzi stared at Hu Yining stubbornly. Even though she was in great pain, she did not intend to give that item to Hu Yining and Fox Supremacy Ziwei. That item was the key for the Heavenly Fox tribe to break through the shackles of 9 tribulations. He. Hu Yining chuckled and did not continue torturing Hu Qingzi. Instead, she turned around and left. The surrounding Heavenly Foxes mocked Hu Qingzi when they saw this. Hu Qingzi closed his eyes and ignored them. Instead, he used the remaining time he had to recuperate. His originally tender skin was now covered in blisters and rotten flesh. The next day, Hu Yining came to Hu Qingzi on time again. After some questioning, she tortured Hu Qingzi again. The third day, the fourth day. Day after day, when Hu Yining was torturing Hu Qingzi, a Heavenly Fox flew into the Heavenly Fox Valley in a panic and screamed in the direction of Fox Supremacy Ziwei. "Fox Supremacy Ziwei. Yuan Venerate North Mystic has escaped from the immortal prison and even suppressed the Dao Yen, Immortal Emperor." Boom! Hu Yining and the others stared dumbfounded at the direction of Fox Supremacy Ziwei. Then, Fox Supremacy Ziwei came out of seclusion and appeared in front of everyone in the blink of an eye. She glared at the panicking Heavenly Fox and asked, "What did you say?" The Heavenly Fox recounted the information it had obtained. The more the Heavenly Foxes heard, the more terrified they became. Finally, they turned to look at Hu Qingzi. Hu Qingzi lowered her head and smirked. When she raised her head again, she looked at Hu Yining mockingly. "The Dao Yen Immortal Emperor has been suppressed? How is that possible? The information must be fake, right?" Hu Yining turned to look at Hu Qingzi coldly. Her mind raced, and in the next moment, she sent a palm strike toward Hu Qingzi. Hu Qingzi cursed inwardly. "This little fox actually wants to kill me?" Before Hu Yining's palm could land on Hu Qingzi, Fox Supremacy Ziwei appeared between the two of them. Hu Yining hurriedly retracted her palm. "What are you doing?" Fox Supremacy Ziwei glared at Hu Yining. "Fox Supremacy, Hu Qingzi has a good relationship with that person. If she survives, I'm afraid our Heavenly Fox Valley will be destroyed." Hu Yining said. "I've said it before. No one is allowed to kill her before we know the whereabouts of that thing." Fox Supremacy Ziwei glared at Hu Yining, displeased with her decision. Hu Yining lowered her head with an ugly expression. "Yes, Fox Supremacy. Whether the information is true or not, he has no way of knowing that this woman is in our hands." Fox Supremacy Ziwei sneered and glanced at Hu Qingzi. Suddenly, she waved her hand. The pillar and Hu Qingzi shrunk and flew into the sleeve of Fox Supremacy Ziwei. "All of you go into seclusion during this period. Don't leak any information, Fox Supremacy, Ziwei said coldly. After saying that, she flew into the sky. Regardless of whether the information was true or not, she had to inform Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu. Everyone heard what Lord Fox Supremacy said, right? Go into seclusion. Hu Yinin was silent for a moment before she glanced at everyone. Chapter 2080. Spiritual Spring Water 9 Desolation Regions. Heavenly Gu Sacred City. When Ning Qi arrived, he noticed that half of the cultivators in Heavenly Gu Sacred City seemed to have soul-devouring worms in their bodies. These cultivators' aptitudes and cultivation levels were generally higher. As for the remaining half, they might not have caught the attention of the soul-devouring worms, or they might have just arrived at Heavenly Gu Sacred City not long ago. Little brother, is this your first time in Heavenly Gu Sacred City? A human cultivator walked in front of Ning Qi and said with a smile. This human cultivator's cultivation was quite high. He was already a 4-tribulation creator, and he would be considered a perfected immortal in the central continent. He looked to be in his 50s and had a kind expression on his face. Behind him was a group of young human cultivators. Their cultivation levels were different and their talents were also very different. However, they were all above average. Seeing that the old man was trying to strike up a conversation with Ning Qi, the group of human cultivators showed a hint of fear in their eyes. Yes. Ning Qi nodded with a smile. The old man's eyes glinted as he said with a smile, there are many foreign race cultivators in Heaven Gu Sacred City. Human race geniuses like us will easily be targeted by them. May I know why little brother has come to Heaven Gu Sacred City? Perhaps I can help you a little. This isn't the place to talk. Why don't you come to my humble abode? These little brothers are the same as you. Sure. Ning Qi nodded with a smile. Seeing that Ning Qi agreed, the smile on the old man's face widened, but the group of young cultivators behind him looked at Ning Qi with a trace of hostility. They basically came to Heaven Gu Sacred City alone, and seeing that they could be favored by a 4-tribulation creator, they were thinking about how to acknowledge him as their master. Naturally, they hoped that there would be as few competitors as possible. Soon, Ning Qi and the others followed the old man back to his residence. This was an incomparably luxurious house, with groups of maids, including all kinds of races. The young cultivators standing with Ning Qi had never seen such a scene before, and they were immediately shocked. Their eyes revealed a trace of passion, and the spiritual qi in this place seemed to be 2 or 3 times thicker than the outside world. Hee little friends, I have a spiritual spring here. I wonder if you're interested in taking a look? The old man smiled. Senior, the spirit qi in this place is incomparably dense. Is it because of this spirit spring? A young cultivator's face revealed a look of anticipation. When the others heard this, they were immediately overjoyed. If they could drink a few mouthfuls of this spirit spring water, it would at least be equivalent to taking a few 6th or 7th grade medicinal pills. That's right, this spirit spring is in the backyard. This old man will bring you all to have a look. The old man smiled and nodded. Everyone quickly followed the old man to the backyard. Along the way, they saw many guards whose cultivation bases were much higher than theirs. One of them was incomparably tall, sitting in one of the courtyards cultivating. When they walked past, he would open his eyes and look at them condescendingly. It's a Titan descendant. It seems like this senior is quite powerful in the Heavenly Gu Sacred City. Otherwise, how could he afford to raise a Titan descendant as a guard? Everyone looked at each other with different thoughts in their mind. If they could become the subordinates of this old man, their futures would definitely be bright. With this idea in mind, many young cultivators continued to flatter the old man. The old man smiled and seemed to be very friendly to everyone. After passing through a few more corridors, the old man's figure suddenly stopped. Everyone looked forward and saw that there was a 10 feet wide spiritual spring. The spiritual spring water was constantly gushing out, and the mist was steaming. It was like a paradise on earth. In addition, the spirit chi here was even denser, so everyone was subconsciously immersed in it. Ningqi looked at the spiritual spring and smiled slightly. His divine sense easily broke through the seal on the surface of the spiritual spring. Without the old man noticing, he saw the scene in the depths of the spiritual spring. It was different from the fairyland outside. In the depths of the spiritual spring, there were groups of black insects hugging together. There were thousands of them. These insects seemed to be larvae, and the spiritual spring was their nourishment. At the top of the swarm, there were more than a dozen soul-devouring insects that were several times larger than the other insects. They were the size of a fist, and they were buzzing in anticipation, as if waiting for some kind of order. Young friends, it is fate that we meet. This old man has nothing to entertain you with, so I will offer you a few mouthfuls of spiritual spring water. The old man suddenly smiled and clapped his hands. Then, two maidservants walked over with a plate in their hands. There were cups on the plate, and the number was exactly the same as the number of people in Ning Chi's group. The maidservant bent down and scooped some spiritual spring water from the spiritual spring. At this moment, Ning Chi noticed that the soul-devouring insects that seemed to have grown up leaped up and merged into the spiritual spring water, becoming transparent. When the maidservant poured the spiritual spring water into the cups, the soul-devouring insects were quietly sitting inside. However, it seemed that other than Ning Chi, the other young cultivators did not notice this at all. Instead, they were shocked by the old man's generosity. "Senior, you are too kind. This spiritual spring water is so precious, how can we enjoy it?" A young cultivator repeatedly declined. Seeing this, the rest of the cultivators glared at him with dissatisfaction. One of them even couldn't help but take a cup and was about to drink it. At this moment, a strong wind swept past and directly shattered the cup. The spiritual spring water immediately spilled on the ground, and the moment the transparent soul-devouring insects touched the ground, they directly merged into the soil and disappeared without a trace. That cultivator was stunned for a moment and fiercely looked at Ning Chi. His eyes were like a volcano that was about to erupt, filled with anger. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The rest of the people also looked at Ning Chi with a trace of anger in their eyes. How could this guy be so rude? He actually dared to break the cup containing the spiritual spring water? Such precious spiritual spring water, wasn't it directly wasted? What are you doing? That cultivator was furious. If it weren't for the old man's presence, he would have already attacked Ning Chi. A sharp light flashed in the old man's eyes. He stared at Ning Chi and gestured to the two maidservants who were about to attack. He wanted to know why Ning Chi broke the spiritual spring water. "If you drink this cup of water, you won't be you anymore. Why aren't you thanking me?" Ning Chi smiled. "What nonsense are you talking about? Why can't I understand? Are you crazy? This is spiritual spring water. With such spiritual energy, drinking a cup is equivalent to drinking several 6th or 7th rank medicinal pills. You actually broke my spiritual spring water, you." That cultivator's morale was low. He simply couldn't understand what Ning Chi was saying. However, among the group of young people, there were two people who looked at each other and saw the horror in each other's eyes. They subconsciously moved their feet, planning to walk behind Ning Chi. "Little brother, what do you mean?" Chapter 2081. Chapter 2081. Giant Worm, don't you understand what I'm saying? Giant Worm. Ning Chi looked at the old man with a faint smile. Giant Worm? Everyone had a strange look on their faces when they heard this. Ning Chi didn't look like a lunatic, so why were his words so strange? At this time, the two cultivators behind Ning Chi were even more shocked when they heard this. They looked at the old man with a trace of fear in their eyes. The old man ignored the two people and focused all his attention on Ning Chi. How did this guy see through my true identity? "How dare you? Senior kindly invited us to his cave residence as guests, and this is how you treat a guest? Don't you know any etiquette? The guy who almost drank a mouthful of the spiritual spring water was extremely angry. Seeing this, the rest of the people also condemned Ningqi. They were afraid that the old man would be so angry that they couldn't drink the spiritual spring water. Little friend, what do you mean by the giant worm? The old man smiled. It seemed that he didn't want to reveal his identity until the last moment. You still don't want to admit it? Ningqi smiled and walked in front of the spiritual spring water. He looked at the spiritual spring water and said, "There are a lot of little worms in here. Could they be your sons? If I kill them all, will you talk to me with your true identity?" The old man's expression suddenly changed, and then he laughed. At this moment, he no longer had the kind face from before, but was extremely ferocious and eerie. Finally, after hearing the old man's laughter, the group of young human cultivators seemed to have reacted, and their eyes became uncertain. "Aunt, how did you see through my true identity? In Heaven Gu Sacred City, you are the first human I've seen who saw through my true identity. Tell me, maybe I can let you live today." The old man laughed. See through my true identity? Could it be that this senior was not a human? What are you waiting for? He's a soul-devouring worm. I heard that the soul-devouring worm has reappeared in the world, but I didn't expect it to be true. It's all my fault for not listening to Master. I thought it was just a rumor. The two young cultivators hiding behind Ningqi shouted at the group of cultivators that were still standing there. One of them felt regret and remorse. He looked at the old man with a hint of fear in his eyes. Whether or not they would be able to leave this place alive was a question. Soul-devouring insects? What are soul-devouring insects? The group of young cultivators were at a loss, but even though they were at a loss, they still quickly ran behind Ningqi and looked around in horror. Unknowingly, they were surrounded by hundreds of cultivators. Some of these cultivators were humans, some were aliens, but they all had the same characteristic. Several black tentacles protruded from the back of these people, like spiders. The young cultivator who was incomparably angry at Ningqi at first had a look of fear on his face. No matter how stupid he was, he could clearly see the situation in front of him. There was likely something strange about that cup of spirit spring water. "Aren't you going to say it?" The old man smiled, then signaled to his subordinates around him, and stood there with a smile. When the surrounding cultivators saw this, they suddenly walked slowly towards Ningqi and the others with cold faces. The weakest of this group of cultivators was a half-step to the creation realm, and the stronger ones were even first and second tribulation masters of creation. The young cultivators around Ningqi were no match for them at all. Seeing this scene, everyone showed a look of horror on their faces and prepared to fight with their lives. But suddenly, they felt a faint breeze sweep past their faces. Then, the hundreds of ferocious cultivators around them stopped in their tracks. Puff, puff, puff. Piles of rotten flesh scattered on the ground, and the ground was immediately dyed red with blood. The entire backyard was filled with an incomparably pungent smell of blood. The old man stood in a pile of flesh and blood, looking at Ningqi in disbelief. The group of young cultivators around Ningqi did not even have time to react. How did hundreds of ferocious guys, who seemed to want to skin them alive, die in the blink of an eye? They only reacted when Ningqi walked towards the old man and looked at Ningqi's back in shock. "How many more lairs like yours are there in Heavenly Gu Sacred City?" Ningqi walked up to the old man and smiled. "Who are you? Do you know that this is Heavenly Gu Sacred City? The aura you released just now has already leaked, and it won't be long before people stronger than me arrive here. It's not too late for you to escape now." The old man did not answer Ningqi. Instead, he said coldly, "Who told you that I'm going to escape?" Ningqi smiled. "You." The old man was slightly taken aback, and a trace of doubt gradually appeared in his eyes. What was this guy in front of him doing? From the beginning, He had taken the initiative to find Ning Qi, thinking that Ning Qi happened to have some kind of treasure that could see through his true identity. However, judging from Ning Qi's current attitude, Ning Qi clearly had no intention of leaving this place. What kind of trump card did he have? It had to be known that Heavenly Gu Sacred City was guarded by Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu, and even the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor of the Central Mainland did not dare to come here for various reasons. At that moment, the group of human race cultivators behind Ning Qi looked at each other and shot up into the sky with tacit understanding, intending to escape this place quickly. However, they were forced to land in midair. 3 figures stood in the sky above the courtyard, staring coldly at Ning Qi and the others. The aura of these 3 people was even more terrifying than that of the old man. "It's over. If I had known this would happen, I would have left immediately." The group of human race cultivators was extremely regretful. What happened? Why did so many of our people die? Among the 3 figures, the one with the strongest aura said faintly as he looked at the old man and ignored Ning Qi. Ning Qi's aura was very obscure, and to the 3 of them, he was not much different from an ordinary first tribulation creator, so they did not take him seriously. This person has a way to see through our true identities. These people were all killed by him. Please take action and kill this person. The old man cupped his hands and said, "He can see through our true identities?" The 3 of them were slightly taken aback and subconsciously looked at Ning Qi. One of them reacted quickly and reached out with his hand. The surging power of creation pressed down on Ning Qi like a mountain. In an instant, even the group of human race cultivators who were some distance away from Ning Qi were forced to kneel on the ground by the mighty power of creation and spat out mouthfuls of blood. Ning Qi smiled and made a grabbing motion with his hand. The power of creation that was about to descend on him was immediately dispelled. At the same time, the 3 figures in the sky revealed looks of horror. They were unable to control their bodies at all, and they crashed heavily onto the ground before kneeling before Ning Qi with a thump. Chapter 2082. Chapter 2082 of Where Isn't It You? The 3 people kneeling in front of Ning Qi exuded an aura that surpassed that of a 6th tribulation master of creation. With such strength, they were considered above average in Heaven Gu Sacred City. The stronger masters of creation basically didn't show themselves. Hence, if anything happened to the Soul Eater clan in Heaven Gu Sacred City, it was basically these 3 people who dealt with it. Unexpectedly, they were suppressed by someone today. The old man stared at Ning Qi, dumbfounded. It was only at this moment that he felt that the situation was becoming more and more serious. The guy in front of him clearly knew who they were, yet he still dared to suppress them. Could it be that his target this time was the Spirit Eater clan? How strong! The group of human race cultivators looked at Ning Qi in shock. After the shock, they were ecstatic. Ning Qi had just knocked over the cup of spirit spring water, which was enough to prove that he wasn't a bad person. His cultivation was also very strong, so it seemed like they would be able to leave this place alive today. Let me ask you again. How many more lairs like this are there in Heaven Gu Sacred City? Ning Qi asked with a smile. The 3 of them didn't speak, and neither did the old man. They were frantically trying to figure out how to escape from Ning Qi and pass the news to Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu so that he could personally suppress them. Ning Qi smiled and waved his hand gently. With a soft sound, one of the 3 soul eater worms kneeling in front of him died. His head exploded like fireworks, and the headless corpse fell to the ground with a loud thud. And, how dare you? The remaining 2 looked at Ning Qi in disbelief. They hadn't expected that Ning Qi would really dare to kill them. How many more lairs like this are there? Ning Qi asked with a smile. A moment later, another person died. The remaining soul eater worm exchanged a glance with the old man, who took the initiative to speak to Ning Qi. There are thousands of lairs like this, so you won't be able to wipe them all out even if you want to. You have killed so many of our people today, so it's impossible for you to leave this place. However, if you want to live, I can show you a way. Oh? What way? Ningqi asked with a faint smile. Become one of us. A hint of pride appeared on the old man's face. My Spirit Devourer clan came from the land of the immortals. Regardless of whether it is our bloodline or our status, we are countless times greater than you human ants. With your level of cultivation, if you become a member of my clan, you will definitely obtain an extraordinary status. Forget it. It seems like you won't tell me the truth even if I ask you. Ningqi shook his head, then lightly struck out with his palms. The old man and the other soul-devouring insect kneeling on the ground were instantly turned into a mist of blood. At the same time, Ningqi turned around and struck the spirit spring. With a bang, the entire spirit spring was turned into ashes, and a deep pit appeared in its place. Thank you for saving my life today, Senior. The group of human cultivators hurriedly stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Heaven Gu Sacred City is a place of trouble. You should leave this place quickly. Ningqi waved his hand indifferently and turned to leave. When the group of human cultivators saw this, they looked at each other and then tacitly followed Ningqi. They didn't dare to follow too close, nor did they dare to follow too far. After Ningqi noticed this, he smiled and didn't chase them away. That seems to be where Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu is cultivating in seclusion. Senior, you actually want to look for Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu? This is a Yuan Venerate existence. Why don't we leave on our own? That's right. This place is too dangerous. It's better to leave as soon as possible. Can you guarantee that you won't encounter other soul-devouring insects on the way out of Heaven Gu Sacred City? This, the group of human cultivators following Ningqi discussed in low voices for a while. Finally, they gritted their teeth and decided to follow Ningqi. They suddenly discovered that the cultivators around them seemed to be sizing them up intentionally or unintentionally. When they were not far from the incomparably huge building that looked like a giant bug lying on the ground, the surrounding cultivators were already openly staring at them with cold expressions. At that moment, a figure flew across the sky and landed beside Ningqi. Third Ming, are you done? Ningqi asked with a smile. The third Ming prince nodded. I have killed all the small insects in other places. How was it? Was it fast enough? It was all right. Ningqi smiled. Killed all the small insects in other places? The group of human cultivators couldn't help but look at the third Ming prince in shock. They were finally sure that this senior and this cultivator, who had just arrived, had come to the 9 desolations to eradicate the soul-devouring insects. The arrival of the third Ming prince calmed the human cultivators down a little. Although they couldn't tell what the cultivation base of the third Ming prince was, they could tell that he was definitely not weak based on what he had just said. This is the nest of the small insects? Why don't we just wipe this place out? The third Ming prince surveyed the surroundings. His words made the group of human cultivators gasp. Wipe this place out? How many innocent human cultivators would lose their lives if they did that? The way they looked at the third Ming prince changed slightly. This is not the immortal prison. I don't care what you do in the immortal prison. However, I will let you know what pain is if you dare to kill a human cultivator here. Ningqi looked at the third prince with a smile and said, I got it. The third Ming prince said with an embarrassed smile, Immortal prison? The group of human cultivators behind the two suddenly felt like their brains were not enough to process the information in Ningqi's words. Why the immortal prison? Wasn't it the place where the Dao Yen immortal emperor used to suppress the demons? Could this man be a demon from the immortal prison? They stared at the third Ming prince in terror. Normally, they would treat Ningqi's words as a joke. However, they had just experienced the crisis of the soul-devouring insects, and the words came from the mouth of Ningqi, who had just saved their lives. They had no idea if they should believe him or not. Ning Qi's voice wasn't soft, so when the surrounding cultivators heard the conversation between the third prince and Ning Qi, they slowly gathered around. Many cultivators who weren't infected by the soul-devouring worms were curious about this scene. "Guys, may I know who the small insects are?" A young cultivator glanced at Ning Qi and the third Ming prince with an indifferent smile. "Isn't that you?" the third Ming prince said calmly. The young cultivator's expression changed instantly. His gaze toward the third Ming prince and Ning Qi was filled with a cold, murderous intent. The eyes of the cultivators around him turned hostile too, as if they were waiting for the young cultivator to give the order. "They are all soul-devouring insects." Chapter 2083. An old friend, I'll leave these minions to you. Ning Qi smiled and walked toward the insect-shaped building, without looking back. The third Ming prince curled his lips and grabbed at the young cultivator. The surrounding air seemed to have turned into a boulder of 10,000 caddies, crushing the young cultivator into a meatball before he could react. The rest of the soul-devouring insects finally reacted and glared at the third Ming prince in shock and anger. The third Ming prince chuckled, "What are you looking at? Today is the day you die." As soon as he finished his sentence, the third Ming prince began his massacre. The cultivators that were parasitized by the soul-devouring insects died miserably on the spot. The cultivators that were not parasitized by the soul-devouring insects stared at the scene with their mouths agape. They could not understand what was going on. Why did the other party start a massacre all of a sudden? In order to ensure their own safety, the cultivators ran far away and stopped to observe. Inside the insect-shaped building, wherever Ning Qi passed, not a single soul-devouring insect could stand, leaving a trail of corpses behind him. The situation in Heaven Gu Sacred City was as he expected. Most of the people were parasitized by the soul-devouring insects, especially this insect-shaped building, where there was not a single normal human. Soon, Ning Qi walked into the depths of the insect-shaped building. The soul-devouring insects around him no longer dared to move forward. At the same time, there were a few soul-devouring insects with the aura of the 9 Tribulations Creator Masters hiding in the dark and looking at Ning Qi in horror. In front of Ning Qi, there was an incomparably huge spirit spring. The spirit qi that this spirit spring emitted was dozens of times more than the spirit spring in the old man's house. The spirit qi here was also incomparably rich. A normal cultivator taking a breath of it would be equivalent to a few days of bitter cultivation. Ning Qi's gaze fell on the depths of the spiritual spring. Below it, there were millions of larvae of soul-devouring insects huddled together. Many of them had already matured and could be parasitized. When Ning Qi arrived, there were a few dozen cultivators sitting there with bowls of spiritual spring water placed in front of them. In the spiritual spring water, there were transparent soul-devouring insects that had almost merged with the spiritual spring water. Who is he? This appearance, wait a minute, among the cultivators sitting in front of the spiritual spring water, one of them seemed to recognize Ning Qi and his face was filled with shock and disbelief. A few decades ago, he had witnessed Ning Qi being suppressed in the immortal prison with his own eyes. Why was he here now? Could it be someone who looked like him? Brother Beixian. Just as the cultivator was feeling bewildered, a cultivator who had finished drinking the spirit spring water looked at Ning Qi in disbelief. Then, a look of ecstasy appeared on his face as he ran to Ning Qi and sized him up. Beixian brothers? Was he really Yuan Venerate Beixian? The cultivator who had previously recognized Ning Qi was greatly shocked after hearing Wu Yin's words. Why are you here? Ning Qi was slightly startled, and then his expression became serious. Hearing this, Wu Yin was finally sure that it was Ning Qi in front of him. He couldn't help but be ecstatic and said, "You still ask me? I should be the one asking you. Why are you here? Weren't you suppressed by the Dao Yen, immortal emperor in the immortal prison? I thought I would never see you again in my life. It's a long story. Why are you here? Ningqi said with a frown. Wu Yin laughed. Brother Beixian, you definitely didn't expect that the cultivators here are extremely hospitable. I was just passing by and they pulled me here to drink the spiritual spring water. TSK, this spiritual spring water is really amazing. The spiritual energy contained in it is too rich. I only drank a bowl, but it was as if I had consumed a few 7th or 8th grade elixirs. Brother Beixian, do you want to drink a bowl? At this point, Wu Yin hurriedly looked around and then his gaze landed on a cultivator. That cultivator was looking at Ningqi coldly. Wu Yin didn't seem to notice anything wrong and shouted to that cultivator, Brother Chundong, this is my brother Beixian. Give him a bowl of spiritual spring water too. The cultivator who was called Chundong by Wu Yin didn't reply and continued to look at Ningqi coldly. Ningqi glanced at the empty bowl in the distance and immediately grabbed Wu Yin. Before Wu Yin could react, Ningqi patted his body a few times, and a vast amount of immortal spiritual energy rushed into Wu Yin's body. Wu Yin's face was filled with shock, and he felt intense pain all over his body. He looked at Ningqi in disbelief. Just when he thought that Ningqi had gone crazy, Wu Yin suddenly felt as if something was about to crawl out of his stomach. He couldn't help but retch. The next moment, several black tentacles extended out of his mouth and grabbed tightly around Wu Yin's mouth, as if they were unwilling to come out. Ningqi snorted coldly and with a thought, the bug was pulled out by an invisible force and fell heavily on the ground. This scene not only stunned Wu Yin, but also the people who were about to drink the spiritual spring water. They didn't know what was happening. Brother Beixian? Why is there such a bug in my stomach? Wu Yin's eyes revealed a trace of horror. This is a soul-devouring bug. It has just matured and is looking for someone to parasitize. It hides in the spiritual spring water. You just drank the spiritual spring water. If I wasn't here, you would have died in a few hours. And it will replace you and live for you. Ningqi said. Hiss, Wu Yin gasped. The cultivators who hadn't drunk the spiritual spring water couldn't help but stand up and look at the cultivator named Chundong in bewilderment. Big Brother Chundong, is what he said true? Are there really bugs in the water? Soul-devouring bug. Wait, could it be? Everyone, this is Yuan Venerate Beixian. I don't think he would lie to us. It turns out that these fellows are up to no good. No wonder they would give us such precious spiritual spring water. The cultivator who had recognized Ningqi hurriedly exclaimed before running to Ningqi's side and bowing respectfully. I am Du from the Flame Mountain. Greetings, Yuan Venerate Beixian. Du's cultivation wasn't weak. He was a 3-tribulation creator, and could be considered a perfected immortal. Ordinary spiritual spring water wouldn't be able to tempt him, but the spiritual energy contained in the spiritual spring water was so rich that even he almost drank a mouthful. Yuan Venerate Beixian? He was Yuan Venerate Beixian? The other cultivators stared at Ningqi, dumbfounded. There was a hint of disbelief in their eyes. However, Du was no ordinary cultivator. Flaming Mountain was a force second only to the 6th great sect. It had the chance to replace the destroyed Joyous Demon sect and become one of the 7 great sects. Therefore, they believed what Du had said. However, they were still shocked. Great Chundong. I treated you as a brother, yet you actually want to harm me. Wu Yin glared at Chundong furiously. Chapter 2084. Threats. The moment Chundong's words left his mouth, the surrounding cultivators immediately revealed faint smiles as they looked at Ningqi and the others with schadenfreude. The expressions of Du and the others changed slightly, but they did not panic. Instead, they looked at Ningqi. Ningqi had suppressed 10x and killed Yuan Venerate Songji in the past. They believed that even if he was not a match for Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu, he would still be able to save their lives today. Brother Beixian, Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu seems a little strong. Should we leave first? Wu Yin looked at Ningqi. Although she was angry, the current situation forced her to leave. Let's wait. I also want to see which distinguished guests Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu is entertaining later. Let's take care of them together today. Ningqi smiled. A trace of astonishment flashed across Wu Yin's eyes when he heard this, while Chun Dong and the others let out a cold laugh. They felt that Ningqi was too arrogant. Du and the others exchanged glances. Ningqi didn't leave, so they didn't dare to act rashly. They could only wait where they were. Time ticked by. Just as Du and the others were getting more and more nervous, Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu finally walked out with a few figures. Chun Dong and the others hurriedly bowed respectfully. Ningqi glanced around and smirked. Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu was accompanied by a few 9 Tribulation Creation Masters. He was rather familiar with 2 of them. They were Fox Venerate Purple Myrtle of the Sky Fox Valley and Immortal Venerate Jade Water of the Jade Water City. The rest were foreign race cultivators. They all had one thing in common. Their bodies had been parasitized by soul-devouring worms. When Fox Supremacy Purple Myrtle saw Ningqi, her eyes flickered. Ningqi noticed her peculiar expression. Then, Ningqi's gaze fell on the figure in the middle. This person was the legendary Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu. Judging from his aura, this person's strength should be second only to the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor in the Central Mainland. He was much stronger than Yuan Venerate Devil Corpse, who had been on par with him in the past. So many 9 Tribulations creators. The eyes of Du and the others flickered, revealing a trace of fear as they subconsciously stood behind Ningqi. Wu Yin took a deep breath and clenched her fists tightly. She was afraid that there would be a fierce battle today. Yuan Venerate North Mystic, I heard that you were imprisoned in the immortal prison by the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor. I didn't expect you to return to the Central Mainland after a few decades. I admire your methods. Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu looked at Ningqi with a faint smile. Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu, you almost turned the entire 9 Great Desolation regions into your Spirit Eater race. I really admire you. Ningqi smiled. You flatter me. Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu was very calm and had no intention of explaining. Immortal Venerate Yushui was currently glaring at Ningqi coldly. The aura of a 9 Tribulation creator was constantly exuding from his body. Most people felt the pressure coming from Immortal Venerate Yushui, but Yuan Venerate Heavenly Gu and the others felt like ordinary people. Fox Supreme Z-Wei of Celestial Fox Valley and Immortal Supreme Jade Water of Jade Water City. I remember that these 2 weren't part of your Spirit Eater clan not long ago. I didn't expect you to possess them in just a few decades. I wonder if the 2 of them drank the spiritual spring water or were they subdued by you. Ningqi glanced at the 2 of them and smiled at Yuan Venerate Tiangu. Fox Venerable Z-Wei and Immortal Venerable Jade Water's expressions did not change. Clearly, the 2 of them had already lost their minds. Now, they were just 2 soul-devouring insects holding their bodies. Du and the others were incomparably shocked. Even the 9 Tribulations Masters of Creation were parasitized? So what if they drank the spiritual spring water? So what if I personally subdued them? Yuan Venerate Beixian, you didn't come here today just to chat with me, did you? Do you want to become part of the Spirit Eater clan or do you want to die at my hands? Yuan Venerate Tianga looked at Ningqi with a faint smile. Of course, I'm sending you to the afterlife. Ningqi whispered in Yuan Venerate Heavenly Venerate's ear. Yuan Venerate Heavenly Venerate was stunned, and the rest of the cultivators were also dumbfounded. Ningqi had actually appeared beside Yuan Venerate Heavenly Venerate at some point in time. Everything was so strange that even Yuan Venerate Heavenly Venerate couldn't react until he heard Ningqi's voice. Yuan Venerate Tianga's eyes flashed with a fierce glint. He was about to make a move when he suddenly felt an extremely terrifying power rush into his body from the top of his head. In an instant, His meridians, flesh, and creation power were all suppressed by this power. Yuan Venerate Tiangu only had time to let out a miserable howl before his body turned into ashes and scattered on the ground. From the moment Ning Qi made his move to the moment Yuan Venerate Tiangu died, less than a breath of time had passed. Wu Yin and the others felt as if they had been struck by lightning. They stood there in a daze, unable to believe everything that had just happened. Yuan Venerate Tiangu had been turned into ashes? A Yuan Venerate who had ruled the 9 great desolations for countless years had died at the hands of Ning Qi just like that? Patriarch? Chen Dong and the others exclaimed in shock as they looked at Ning Qi in horror. Ning Qi still hadn't held back. While they were still in shock, Ning Qi had already killed a few 9 tribulations masters of creation behind Yuan Venerate Tiangu as easily as slaughtering chickens. At this point, only Fox Venerate Ziwei and Immortal Venerate Yushui were still alive. The iciness in Immortal Venerate Yushui's eyes had already vanished and been replaced by fear. Fox Venerate Ziwei wasn't much better. However, she still remembered that she had a trump card in her hand. Perhaps this trump card could save her life. Don't kill me. Immortal Venerate Yushui knelt in front of Ning Qi and begged for mercy. Soul-devouring worms can also beg for mercy? Ning Qi looked down at her with interest. Those little worms have all been killed. Do you want me to get rid of these fellows? The third Ming prince walked over with a group of human race cultivators behind him. These cultivators were looking at the third Ming prince with reverence in their eyes. Fox Venerate Ziwei subconsciously glanced at the third Ming prince when she heard this before exchanging glances with Immortal Venerate Yushui, who was kneeling on the ground. Both of them had ugly expressions on their faces. It was likely that all the people that Yuan Venerate Tiangu and the others had parasitized were already dead. If they died as well, even if the soul-devouring race didn't go extinct, who knew how long it would take for them to rise again? After weighing the pros and cons, Fox Venerate Ziwei told Ning Qi, "You can't kill us. I'll slap you to death." The third Ming prince scoffed and was about to kill Fox Venerate Ziwei when he was stopped by Ning Qi. Ning Qi looked at Fox Venerate Ziwei with a faint smile. "Why can't I kill you? Do you remember the little fox, Hu Chengzi?" Fox Venerate Ziwei smiled. "Juzi, is she in your hands?" Ning Qi smiled. "That's right." Chapter 2085. Chapter 2085 of WAR. This is a real beauty. Fox Venerable Ziwei was slightly stunned, while Wu Yin, Diyu, and the others stared at Ning Qi with their mouths agape. This time, they finally saw it clearly. The mighty Immortal Venerable Yushui, a 9 tribulations creator, was smashed into a puddle of blood mist by Ning Qi with a single palm strike. Just how terrifying was his strength to be able to do that? The atmosphere froze. Ning Qi acted as if he had done something insignificant. He smiled at Fox Venerable Ziwei and said, "What did you just say? I didn't hear you clearly. Say it again." Fox Sovereign Ziwei's eyes were filled with fear. She gulped and said, "Let me go, and I'll let Hu Qing go." "All right." Ning Qi smiled and said, "Hand over Hu Qing, and I will let you leave alive. Not only must I leave this place alive, but you can't hurt me, and they can't attack me either." Fox Eminence Purple Myrtle didn't fall for it. Her gaze landed on the third prince. This guy gave her an extremely dangerous feeling, one that was far more dangerous than Ning Qi. "Do you agree?" Ning Qi looked at the third prince. Third Prince Ming nodded indifferently. "That's enough. Hand over the fox orange." Ning Qi smiled at Fox Venerable Ziwei. "Let me leave first. When I reach a safe place, I will naturally let Hu Qing out." Fox Supremacy Ziwei looked at Ning Qi warily. When she said that, her heart had already begun to tremble. She was afraid that Ning Qi would kill her like how he killed Immortal Supremacy Jade Water without saying a word. "You don't have any room to bargain with me. Hand over Hu Qing, and I swear on my honor that I won't attack you. Ning Qi smiled. I'll give you 3 breaths of time to consider. After 3 breaths of time, no matter what, I'll send you to heaven first. Fox Noble Ziwei was stunned. Soon, 1 breath passed, 2 breaths passed, and the atmosphere became more and more tense. Just as 3 breaths were about to pass, Fox Noble Ziwei gritted her teeth and waved her hand. A cast iron pillar flew out from her sleeve. This pillar expanded in the wind and landed heavily in front of Ning Qi. Hu Qing opened her eyes weakly. When she saw Ning Qi, her eyes brightened and she cried, "Big brother!" Hu Qingzi was in a wretched state. Both of her shoulders had been pierced by the chains. The chains wrapped around her body a few times. Her exposed skin was covered in blisters and rotten flesh. She had been tortured. Ning Qi's expression grew cold. He stepped forward and pulled lightly. The chains, which had countless restrictive spells, turned into powder like tofu. Then, Ning Qi sent immortal qi into Hu Qingzi's body. Her wounds healed at a visible rate. I have given him to you. I hope that Yuan Venerate Beixian will keep his promise, Fox Sovereign Ziwei said lightly. Hu Qing realized that Fox Sovereign Ziwei was also present and immediately glared at her angrily. However, Fox Sovereign Ziwei didn't look at her. Instead, she was looking at Ning Qi nervously. I always keep my word. You may leave. Ning Qi waved his hand. Fox Sovereign Ziwei heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly walked out. The Spirit Eater race members nearby also wanted to leave with Fox Sovereign Ziwei. However, Ning Qi merely glanced at them and they felt their limbs go out of control. They stood rooted to the ground, unable to move. I'll be right back. Third Prince Ming sensed something and smiled at Ning Qi before turning to leave. You're so smart. How did you get caught by them? Ning Qi looked at Hu Qing and smiled. There was a hint of schadenfreude in his eyes. Seeing this, Hu Qing felt extremely wronged. 2 drops of tears rolled down his cheeks, and they almost fell down. Brother Beixian, these are Spirit Eater worms, right? Wu Yin glanced at Chun Dong and the others before asking Ning Qi. Ning Qi patted Hu Qing's head and then nodded at Wu Yin. With a thought, the heads of Chun Dong and the others exploded. In an instant, the ground was filled with corpses. At this point, the Spirit Eater race members in Heaven Gu Sacred City were all dead. The remaining ones that escaped the net wouldn't be able to do much in a short time. Fox Sovereign Ziwei used all her strength to escape towards the central mainland. She didn't dare to stay in the 9 desolation regions any longer. She was also afraid that Ning Qi would go back on his words and chase after her. Therefore, she wanted to go to a place where there was a teleportation array that not many people knew about. She believed that even with Ning Qi's means, he wouldn't be able to find her in a short time. Soon, Fox Sovereign Ziwei arrived at a sparsely populated valley. Not far away, there was a teleportation array surrounded by green vines. Fox Sovereign Ziwei's eyes revealed a hint of joy. Just as she was about to enter the teleportation array suddenly exploded and turned into a pile of dust. Fox Sovereign Ziwei was dumbfounded. She vaguely saw a figure appear in the dust. It's you. Fox Sovereign Ziwei glared at the 3rd Ming Prince with a hint of anger in her eyes. The other party had indeed gone back on his words. It's me. Are you surprised? The 3rd Ming Prince looked at Fox Sovereign Ziwei with a faint smile. You guys went back on your words. You said that you would let me leave safely. Fox Supremacy Purple Myrtle was filled with grief and indignation. Not too long ago, she had also gone back on her word and enjoyed the looks of despair in those fellows' eyes. Now, she had become the prey in the eyes of others, just like those fellows whom she had toyed with before finally killing. I'm the one who went back on my words. However, your cultivation is considered top-notch in the central mainland. I don't think you're that naive. Do you really think that you can leave alive just because I promised to let you leave safely? The 3rd Ming Prince said with a faint smile. Fox Sovereign Ziwei's face was ashen. Ning Qi had said that he would only give her 3 breaths of time. If she didn't agree, she would die anyway. What else could she do? She could only choose to take a gamble. Suddenly, Fox Sovereign Ziwei broke into a smile and a faint, seductive aura emanated from her body. In that instant, Fox Sovereign Ziwei seemed to have become the most beautiful woman in the world. Every smile and frown was enough to make one's heart flutter. If you let me go, I'm willing to give myself to you. The third Ming prince looked at Fox Sovereign Ziwei strangely. In the next instant, he transformed back into his original form. He was a giant snake that was miles long. He stared coldly at Fox Sovereign Ziwei. Do you think you can seduce me when you're so ugly? In my eyes, this is a true beauty. Oh right, she's my second sister. A shadow appeared in front of Fox Sovereign Ziwei. Within it was a snake that looked almost identical to the third Ming prince, except that its body was even more slender. You. Chapter 2086. Chapter 2086. Visit the Celestial Fox Valley. What about you? The third Ming prince sneered and bit at Fox Venerable Ziwei. Compared to his mouth, Fox Venerable Ziwei was as small as an ant. After swallowing Fox Venerable Ziwei, the third Ming prince blinked and muttered in dissatisfaction, "This little bit of meat isn't tasty enough. How I miss the days in the MOC." After eating Fox Eminence Ziwei, the third prince didn't immediately return to Heaven Gu Sacred City. Instead, he wandered around and devoured everything that could move in the vicinity, except for humans. However, the energy contained in these things was too little. It wasn't enough for the third prince to digest, so all he could do was eat. If this continues, even if my cultivation doesn't regress, I will starve to death. No, I have to ask him for a few demonic origin orbs. The third Ming prince muttered to himself and flew toward the celestial Gu city. When he returned, Ning Qi was already preparing to bring Hu Qingzi and Wu Yin to the celestial Fox Valley. Hu Qingzi was determined to take revenge, so Ning Qi naturally brought her along. Is everything done? Ning Qi smiled. Yes, give me a few heaven-grade demonic origin orbs. The third Ming prince smiled fawningly. Ning Qi smiled and waved his hand. A fist-sized demonic elemental bead flew towards the third prince at lightning speed. Seeing this, the third prince hurriedly opened his mouth and swallowed it. Then, a trace of intoxication appeared in his eyes. A heaven-grade demonic elemental bead contained an extraordinary amount of devil qi. Even if the third prince was a human demon at the consummate level, this demonic bead was enough to support him for several years. It's done? What's done? Du and the others subconsciously glanced at each other with a strange look in their eyes. They already had some guesses in their hearts, but they weren't stupid enough to reveal it at this moment. However, there was a hint of fear in their eyes when they looked at the third prince. To be able to kill a Nine Tribulations creator in such a short period of time, just how powerful was that person? Senior. Seeing that Ning Qi and the others were about to leave, Du quickly stepped forward and asked hesitantly, "Senior Bei Xian, are you still accepting disciples?" Ning Qi smiled. "I won't accept it." A trace of disappointment flashed in Du's eyes, and then he asked, "Then do you accept servants?" Servant? Everyone looked at Du strangely. No matter what, Du was a rather famous expert in the central continent. "I won't accept it either." Ning Qi smiled. Then, a sliver of immortal qi flowed out of his body and enveloped Hu Qingzi and Wu Yin. Then, they flew towards Skyfox Valley. Third Prince Ming was in a good mood after eating a heaven-grade devil essence bead. He smiled at Du and said, "I'm taking in a disciple, you can follow me." "What?" Du was startled. "What, you don't want to?" The third prince's face turned cold. Du hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed. "Honorable Master, disciple Du is willing to take Honorable Master as my master." A master for a day, a father for a life. All right. The third Ming prince grabbed at the air, and chased after Ning-Chi with the feather in his hand. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from everyone's sight. Everyone else was dumbfounded. They also wanted to acknowledge Ning-Chi as their master, but they had just hesitated for a moment and missed the opportunity. Seeing how fast Ning-Chi and the third Ming prince were, they couldn't catch up even if they wanted to. They could only sigh in regret. In the Celestial Fox Valley, all the celestial foxes had entered a state of seclusion due to Fox Venerable Ziwei's orders, and the valley was quiet. Under Hu Qingzi's guidance, Ning-Chi broke through several concealment arrays before entering the Celestial Fox Valley. These concealment arrays were of a high grade, and even a 9 tribulation creator might not be able to find them, let alone break them. If not for Hu Qingzi leading the way, Ning-Chi might have had to spend some time to find this place. Brother Beixian, there's no one here. Wu Yin scanned the area with her divine sense, and found nothing out of the ordinary. Ning-Chi glanced at the third Ming prince, and then at the respectful Du behind him. Then, his gaze fell on a certain place in Sky Fox Valley, and the corner of his lips curled up. The third Ming prince heaved a sigh of relief. He was afraid that Ning-Chi wouldn't give him face and chase his new disciple away. Wouldn't he, as a master, lose face? Although the main reason he had accepted Du was so that he could have someone to do some chores for him when Ning-Chi arranged for him to do them, at this moment, in a mysterious space, Hu Qingzi and the others stood in front of a huge water mirror, looking at the figures in fear. The scene in the water mirror was the current state of Sky Fox Valley. Hu Yinin and the others watched Ning-Chi and the others' every move. Hu Yinin, isn't that Hu Qingzi? Isn't she by Fox Venerable Ziwei's side? Why is she here? Who are those guys? How did they break through the concealment arrays here and come to our Sky Fox Valley? Could it be Hu Qingzi's helpers? Are they here to seek revenge? They seem to be creators. Shut up, all of you. This place is the seclusion holy land of the Sky Fox clan. It has nothing to do with the central mainland. Only the core of the Sky Fox clan can come here. That little fox Hu Qingzi doesn't know about this place. As long as we stay here, we'll be safe, Hu Yinin said coldly. The surrounding foxes immediately shut their mouths and stopped chattering. At this time, several old foxes surrounded by many young foxes came to Hu Yinin's side. When Hu Yinin saw these old foxes, a trace of respect appeared on her face. These were the ancestors of the Sky Fox clan. Although they weren't as senior as Fox Venerable Ziwei, their seniority was much higher than all the Sky Foxes present. They were 8 tribulation creators, and even Hu Yinin didn't dare offend them. Hu Qingzi? There's no way Lord Fox Venerable will let her leave alive. I'm afraid Lord Fox Venerable is in trouble. When the old foxes saw Hu Qingzi, they looked at each other and sighed. Hu Yinin said in a low voice, Ancestors, we're in big trouble now. What do you mean? These old foxes had never seen Ning-Chi before, so they naturally didn't recognize him. However, Hu Yinin was different. This person is the Yuan Venerate North Mystic, who was imprisoned in the immortal prison by the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor decades ago. Hu Yinin said softly. Chapter 2087. A Sacred Ground for Seclusion. Chapter 2087. Seclusion, wasn't he imprisoned in the immortal prison? How could he appear here? If it's really Yuan Venerate Beixian, I'm afraid the Fox Lord. The Celestial Fox clan members looked at Ning-Chi with horror in their eyes, and an ominous premonition rose in their hearts. Rest assured, patriarchs, no matter how strong this person is, he won't be able to find this place. If he can't find us, he will naturally leave. Hu Yinin looked at Ning-Chi, and a trace of pity flashed in her eyes. She didn't know what kind of luck Hu Qingzi had encountered to be able to seduce such a peerless character. If she could replace Hu Qingzi, she believed that with her own means, she would definitely be able to make Ningqi submit to her. Sky Fox Valley. Hu Qingzi's injuries had been completely healed by Ningqi. He was looking for Hu Yining and the others in the Sky Fox Valley, but he couldn't find any traces. It was as if all the foxes in the Sky Fox Valley had vanished in an instant. They must have all run away, Wu Yin said. Diyu had just become the disciple of the third Ming prince, so he naturally had to show off his abilities. He searched the Sky Fox Valley with all his might, but he naturally couldn't find the whereabouts of Hu Yining and the others. After searching for a long time, Hu Qingzi ran up to Ningqi angrily and pouted. Big brother, it's a pity that those foxes escaped. That bitch Hu Yining has been torturing me all this time. I almost wanted to commit suicide. If I don't kill her today, I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep well. Little girl, don't worry. Big brother Wu Yin will avenge you. Wu Yin patted his chest as he spoke. Hu Qingzi glanced at him and said with a strange expression, Hu Yining is a seven tribulation creator. Then let big brother Beixian avenge you. Wu Yin chuckled dryly. He suddenly realized that with his cultivation, it seemed that it would be very difficult for him to survive in Ningqi's circle. Not to mention Hu Yining, even Hu Qing could easily defeat him. Thinking up to here, Wu Yin looked at Diyu, and Diyu just happened to look at him, a trace of respect on his face. Seeing this, Wu Yin felt comforted. At least he was Ningqi's brother, and even if the 9 tribulations masters of creation saw him, they wouldn't dare to act rashly. Juzi, I don't think they've left. Ningqi chuckled. Hu Qingzi looked at Ningqi in surprise. She didn't care how Ningqi addressed her, and said in surprise, Big brother, you found their whereabouts? Where are they hiding? The third Ming prince also looked at Ningqi in surprise. Even with his cultivation, he couldn't see any place to hide. Yes. Ningqi smiled. His spiritual sense was extraordinary. Being the primordial immortal fiend celestial physique, he was much more sensitive to the existence of the void than the third prince. Although he couldn't pinpoint the hiding place of the celestial foxes, he could sense traces of the void. These traces were enough. Don't panic, everyone. He's just bluffing, Hu Yining hurriedly said when she saw that her clansmen were in a state of panic. At the same time, she looked at Ningqi with a trace of deep fear. She wasn't sure if Ningqi had really discovered their seclusion sacred ground. It could be that he was trying to scare them so that they would panic and give themselves away. That's right. The seclusion sacred ground of the Celestial Fox clan has been passed down since ancient times. It has helped the Celestial Fox clan escape countless calamities. It can't be discovered so easily. Even the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor might not be able to find it. A few old foxes said calmly. When the other celestial foxes saw this, they calmed down. However, they still looked at Ningqi with fear in their eyes. At this moment, the celestial foxes realized that Ningqi was getting closer and closer to them. They weren't really close, but they were looking at the scene through the water mirror. This meant that Ningqi was getting closer and closer to the entrance of the seclusion sacred ground. This was because everything in the Celestial Fox Valley was transmitted from a small array formation at the entrance of the seclusion sacred ground. This small array formation was very inconspicuous. It was like a few ordinary stones and wouldn't attract anyone's attention. It was a unique array formation of the Celestial Fox clan. It seemed like Ningqi was about to discover it. He seems to have discovered it. Elders, what should we do? If he doesn't leave, won't we be trapped here until we die? Don't panic. Let's see what happens first. Hu Yining shouted coldly. Ningqi lowered his head to look at the stones and the corners of his lips curled up. From the moment he entered the Celestial Fox Valley, he realized that these stones were not ordinary. Under the ordinary appearance of the stones, there were spiritual crystals. These crystals were so small that they were almost negligible. Even the third Prince Ming might have overlooked these stones. It was because of these stones that Ning Qi deliberately sensed the aura of the void in this place. Finally, he found some clues. Hu Cheng and the others looked at Ning Qi's actions with a hint of doubt in their eyes. Could it be that the celestial foxes were hiding here? However, they had already used their divine telekinesis to check countless times. There was no sign of any living person. Are you going to come out yourself, or do I have to do it myself? Ning Qi smiled faintly. This scene looked like he was talking to himself, but to Hu Yining and the others, it was extremely terrifying. A chill rose in their hearts. Then I'll do it myself. Ning Qi laughed and suddenly punched out in the air. In an instant, the space was shattered by Ning Qi, and the holy ground where Hu Yining and the others were in for seclusion shook violently. Some of the foxes with lower cultivation bases couldn't even maintain their balance and fell to the ground. It's quite sturdy. Ning Qi's eyes flashed with surprise when he saw that the celestial fox's hiding place was almost as big as Mount Fangsuan. However, it was different from Mount Fangsuan. This place could not be moved, and the place where he was standing should be the entrance. In the next instant, Ning Qi punched again. Boom! The void fragments grew bigger and bigger. Other than the third Prince Ming, who was still standing, the others were pushed back several hundred feet by the aftershock of Ning Qi's punch. Just the aftershock alone is so terrifying. Brother Beishuan's strength must be skyrocketing. Wu Yin looked at Ning Qi's fist in horror, and a complicated expression flashed through his eyes. Back then, Ning Qi's strength was inferior to his own a few thousand years ago. In just a few thousand years, normal cultivators might not even be able to make a small breakthrough, but Ning Qi's strength had increased by such a terrifying amount. The sacred place is about to collapse. Chapter 2088. The Third Punch. He's going to punch for the third time. A Sky Fox patriarch's tone changed when he saw that Ning Qi was about to punch for the third time. The fear on his face was no less than that of the juniors. Leave this place quickly, a Sky Fox patriarch exclaimed. He could no longer bear the fear and fled the place just as the sacred ground was about to be destroyed. The other Sky Foxes also left the sacred ground when they saw this. They would definitely die if they stayed here any longer, so they might as well go out and fight. Soon, Hu Yining was the only one left in the holy land of seclusion. She glared at Ning Qi. She had been the one to torture Hu Cheng all this time. Once she went out, she would not be able to avoid suffering. However, if she stayed any longer, when the holy land of seclusion shattered, the void storm would tear her to pieces. With that thought in mind, Hu Yining stomped her foot and disappeared. Boom! The third punch landed, and a loud roar came from the depths of the void, as if a building had collapsed. The sacred ground of the Sky Fox race, which had been passed down since ancient times, was destroyed. However, all the Sky Foxes returned to the Sky Fox Valley in an instant. Hu Chengzi, Wu Yin, and Di Yu stared dumbfounded at the group of Sky Foxes in front of Ning Qi and admired him greatly. They had never imagined that they would really be hiding in the Sky Fox Valley. Is it similar to a small cave? The third Ming Crown Prince's eyes flashed with a hint of realization. He finally understood why he couldn't find these foxes. He had to at least break through to the Earth Devil stage to be able to sense the existence of this little paradise. However, the third Ming Crown Prince stared at Ning Qi's back with a hint of fear in his eyes. He didn't expect this guy to be able to find the existence that even he couldn't sense. The third Ming Crown Prince was convinced that he had lost to Ning Qi. You guys are finally willing to come out? Ning Qi smiled and raised his hand slowly. Yuan Venerate Beishian, please don't do anything. We are innocent. The three old foxes hurriedly begged for mercy. However, they heaved a sigh of relief when they realized that Ning Qi was just scratching his ear. As long as they were given a chance to speak, they believed that they had a 70 to 80% chance of making the other side spare their lives. At worst, they could take the entire celestial fox tribe to the other side. With their beauty, they believed that Ningqi would agree. Huinin hid behind the crowd, not daring to show her head. She was afraid of being seen by Hu Qingzi, but how could Hu Qingzi not find her? With a whoosh, Hu Qingzi flew to Ningqi's side and looked down at the group of heavenly foxes. His gaze swept over them and locked onto Hu Yinin. Hu Yinin, you've finally fallen into my hands today. Hu Qingzi was extremely proud and let out a bronze-like laugh. Ning Qi glanced at her with a slightly strange expression and said, "What do you want to do with her?" "Me." Hu Qingzi's eyes were filled with anger. All kinds of torturing methods flashed through her mind, but none of them could relieve her anger. Huinin's face was pale and her eyes were filled with despair. She knew that she would definitely die today. At this moment, no one from the Heavenly Fox clan dared to plead with Hu Qingzi. Many of the Heavenly Foxes who had mocked and ridiculed Hu Qingzi lowered their heads, afraid that Hu Qingzi would kill them as well. "This is not good, that is not good either." Hu Qingzi was somewhat vexed. Ning Qi smiled faintly and said, "Why don't you bring her along and think about it on the way? Tell me when you think of something." Hu Qingzi's eyes lit up and she clapped her hands together. "Big brother, I know how to punish her. I want her to be my maidservant so that I can hit and scold her whenever I want in the future." Hu Yinin was slightly taken aback and looked at Hu Qingzi in disbelief. Was this how she was going to take revenge? The other sky foxes also had strange looks on their faces. However, they had overlooked one thing: Hu Qingzi's vindictiveness. If Hu Yinin became her maidservant, she would probably become Hu Qingzi's punching bag for the next few 100,000 years. That's it. Ning Qi smiled faintly and nodded. He casually injected a strand of immortal qi into Hu Yinin's body and handed a jade slip to Hu Qingzi. "If she harbors ill intentions in the future, crush this jade slip and her spiritual soul will be destroyed." Ning Qi smiled. Hu Yinin's face was pale as she searched her body in horror. She could not find the strand of immortal qi that Ning Qi had injected into her body. When she thought that her life would be in Hu Qingzi's hands in the future, although she did not die, her heart was filled with despair. "Thank you, big brother." Hu Qingzi squeezed the jade slip in surprise and then carefully put it away. He looked coldly at Hu Yinin and said, "What are you still standing there for? Come over here." "Yes." Hu Yinin lowered her head and flew to Hu Qingzi's side. She seemed to have quickly entered the role of a maidservant. Compared to having her spiritual soul destroyed, this little humiliation was nothing. "Little girl, do you want to kill these people?" Wu Yin looked at the group of sky foxes. Don't kill us. We are also willing to be your maidservant." The three old foxes hurriedly begged for mercy. A hint of hesitation flashed in Hu Qingzi's eyes. Seeing this, Ning Qi smiled. This girl was still too soft-hearted. The other party had tortured her so much, but besides baring her fangs and brandishing her claws, she didn't even have the heart to kill the Heavenly Fox clan to take revenge. Perhaps it was because they had the same blood flowing in their veins? "Big brother, why don't you bring them back to be maidservants? There are so many women in your house, and you need someone to serve them." Hu Qingzi looked at Ning Qi. Ning Qi smiled and said, "Do you really think so? They might still be thinking about revenge in the future." "We wouldn't dare. Yuan venerate Beixian, we will never betray you. As long as you spare our lives today, we are willing to be your maidservants in the future." With the three old foxes taking the lead, all the sky foxes immediately expressed their loyalty. "Big brother, with you around, they won't dare to do anything. If anyone has any ulterior motives, just kill them all." Hu Qingzi chuckled coldly. This time, even Hu Yinin was shocked. If one of the sky foxes really wanted revenge, wouldn't she also be killed? "Oh, this is not bad." Ning Qi smiled and waved his hand lightly. Countless strands of immortal qi entered the bodies of the hundreds of heavenly foxes in front of him like spirit snakes. These heavenly foxes had different cultivation levels, but there were many creator masters. The 3 old foxes were 8 tribulation creator masters, and they were more than enough to serve as maidservants. The sacred concubine and the others indeed didn't have any maidservants to serve them. This was something Ning Qi didn't really consider back then. Chapter 2089. Chapter 2089. Chapter 2089. A life worse than death. North Mystic Immortal Capital. Not only did the cultivators from the central continent come to this place, but even the cultivators from the Vermilion Bird continent, the White Tiger continent, and the Black Tortoise continent came to the Green Dragon continent, which was once as famous as their continent but was now renamed as the North Mystic Immortal Capital. All the cultivators only had one goal, which was to see Ning Qi's true appearance and participate in Ning Qi's ascension ceremony. At the same time, they wanted to see if the Dao Yen Immortal Emperor had really been suppressed. The Azure Dragon continent's territory was originally very vast, but with the sudden influx of countless cultivators, not only could the Wang clan's ancestral city no longer accommodate them, but the number of cultivators in the various cities had also increased by several times. With more people, it would stimulate consumption. At the same time, they would bring in all kinds of cultivation resources to exchange. The originally declining Azure Dragon continent was once again filled with vitality. During Ning Qi's absence, the Wang ancestral city was expanded. The original Wang ancestral city was completely demolished and rebuilt into a gigantic immortal palace. Now, the area of the Wang ancestral city was at least several hundred times larger than before. It wouldn't be a problem for 1 billion beings to live here. Brother Wang, when is the coronation of the North Mystic Celestial Lord? I heard that you are a distant relative of the Wang clan. Didn't you get any information? Even if you bring along a direct descendant of the Wang family, he won't know the date of the ceremony. Why are you in such a hurry? Just wait and see. North Mystic Celestial City is no longer the ancestral city of the Wang family. Don't you see that among the cultivators walking on the streets, even 7 or 8 tribulations masters of creation are common? If I'm lucky, I might be able to acknowledge one of them as my master, and that would be the disciple of a celestial king. That's true. In the North Mystic Celestial City, there were many cultivators like this. Not only them, but even those celestial kings were also waiting for the ceremony to begin. After the rulers of the various celestial dynasties personally led their people to annihilate the direct subordinates of the Dao Yen Celestial Emperor, they once again rushed to the North Mystic Celestial City. They were very afraid that if they did not make it in time for Ning Qi's ascension ceremony, Ning Qi would mistakenly think that they did not submit to his rule. This is the Wang ancestral city? Hu Cheng was dumbfounded. Wu Yin was also in disbelief. He had been to the Wang family's ancestral city more than once. This city in front of him was definitely not the Wang family's ancestral city. How could it be so big? There are still so many masters of creation? Ning Qi smiled. These changes must have been caused by Dongfang Haojie and the others. With a thought, Ning Qi led everyone and disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already inside the North Profound Immortal Palace. The palace was remodeled from the original Wang family's ancestral city. It was incomparably huge, but because only the disciples of the Wang family, the War God Temple, and the Blood Abyssal clan lived here, it felt somewhat empty. That's… Wu Yin stared dumbfoundedly at the group of circular logs not far away. There were cultivators hanging on each of the logs. Even the weakest of these cultivators was much, much stronger than him. When Wu Yin saw the faces of the people hanging on one of the logs, a trace of shock immediately appeared on his face. Diyu was just as shocked as him. Hu Cheng flew in front of Dao Yen's Celestial Emperor with interest. She had received news that Ning Qi had suppressed Dao Yen's Celestial Emperor in the Sky Fox Valley. Could this be Dao Yan's celestial emperor? Unknowingly, Wu Yin had already appeared beside Hu Qingzi and said in surprise. Du also appeared behind the two of them. There were not many opportunities to be able to admire the Dao Yan celestial emperor at such a close distance, especially when he knew that it would not be long before the Dao Yan celestial emperor was killed by Ning Qi. Perhaps it would be after Ning Qi ascended the throne, so now that he had the chance, he had to see to his heart's content. Dao Yan's celestial emperor's eyelids moved slightly and he slowly opened his eyes. Tenacious Donkey, Yuan Venerate Hanfei, Song Air, and the others also sensed the movement and opened their eyes. When they saw Ning Qi, their eyes were filled with hatred, but they did not dare make a sound. A trace of humiliation flashed across the Dao Yan immortal emperor's eyes when he saw the few ant-like existences sizing him up with curious gazes. He looked at Ning Qi coldly and said in a hoarse voice, "Why didn't you kill me? Who said I was going to kill you?" Ning Qi smiled and said, A trace of astonishment flashed across the Dao Yan immortal emperor's eyes. When 10x and the rest heard this, their expressions immediately shook, and they looked at Ning Qi in shock. "Brother Bei Xian, if you don't remove the roots, it will grow again." Wu Yin hurriedly sent a voice transmission to Ning Qi. "You're not going to kill me?" Dao Yan's celestial emperor looked at Ning Qi with a hint of hope in his eyes. If he could save his life this time, he would definitely have a chance to make a comeback. "When you suppressed me in the immortal prison, I also gave you a taste of your own medicine by suppressing you in the immortal prison. Don't you want to break through the shackles of the 9 tribulations creator? There is such an opportunity in the immortal prison, as long as your mind is not invaded by the demonic energy." Ning Qi smiled and said. At this moment, the Wang family of the War God Temple seemed to have sensed Ning Qi's arrival. Figures flew out and landed behind Ning Qi. "Greetings, North Mystic Celestial Emperor." Wang Zhong, Dongfang Haojie, and the others all bowed respectfully. Their voices spread throughout the entire North Mystic Celestial City. When the cultivators outside heard this, they immediately looked over in the direction of the North Mystic Celestial City. Dao Yan's celestial emperor was pleasantly surprised. He had never expected that Ning Qi would also plan to suppress him in the immortal prison. Originally, Dao Yan's celestial emperor was very afraid of the immortal prison and did not dare to enter it at all. However, Ning Qi and Yuan Venerate Devil Corpse were able to come out alive. This meant that the immortal prison was not as terrifying as he had imagined. Perhaps this was his chance to rise again. However, with your current cultivation, you can only be a mindless demonic creature if you go to the immortal prison, Ning Qi sighed. Dao Yan's celestial emperor's surprised expression froze. Then, his face twisted as he looked at Ning Qi with hatred and shouted, "Kill me! Kill me! Let's go." Ning Qi smiled and turned to leave. Everyone followed closely behind. After everyone left, Dao Yan's celestial emperor was still roaring angrily. His mind seemed to have collapsed. 10x and the others looked at this scene in a daze. They felt a little sad in their hearts, and their fear towards Ning Qi increased by a few notches. The dignified Dao Yan immortal emperor was already tortured to this state in such a short period of time. North Mystic Celestial Palace, Celestial Emperor Temple. Ning Qi sat in the main seat. Hundreds of figures were sitting in the main hall. Among them were Dongfang Haojie, Meng Qingling, Little Yurzhua Ling Great Sage Xianzhen, Wang Lin and his wife, Shi Lu and Sovereign Python. 60% of the cultivators were from the War God Temple, 30% were from the Wang family, and 10% were from the Blood Abyssal clan. Sacred Concubine Cold Sky sat beside Ning Qi with a smile. She looked very dignified and sacred. North Mystic Celestial Emperor, let's set the date of the coronation for half a month from now. What do you think? Chapter 2090. A Crazy Obsession, half a month later? Okay. Ning Qi nodded. Meng Tianshu, who was standing in the corner of the hall, was overjoyed. He would be able to return to the underworld in half a month. King Wanluo, just you wait. You killed my father, my mother, and hundreds of brothers and sisters died at your hands. This time, I will make you pay the price you deserve. After confirming the date, Ning Qi and the sacred concubine got up and left. Wang Zhong and the others continued to discuss Ning Qi's ascension in the Celestial King Temple. After Ning Qi ascended to the throne, he would be given the title of the North Mystic Celestial Lord. Then, the War God Hall, the Wang family, and the Blood Abyssal race would naturally be conferred titles. For example, Wang Lin and his wife, Dongfang Haojie, Meng Qingling, Shi Lu, Venerable Python, and the others would all need a title, just like the title of Divine Venerate Little Donkey. Ling Ming, do you want to bring your father and the others over? You haven't seen each other in a long time, right? In an incomparably luxurious palace, Ning Qi smiled as he rubbed the belly of the saint concubine and said softly. Fang Qin and Fang Shu were standing behind the two of them. When they heard Ning Qi's words, a look of joy flashed in their eyes. Although many of the Fang clan's disciples were cultivating in the War God Temple, the sacred concubine's bloodline had always been guarding the ancestral land in the Fang sacred palace. That's fine. Fang Qin and Fang Shu, go with them. The sacred concubine nodded with a smile. Yes, madam. The two women looked at each other and quickly left the hall. In another corner of the hall, Hu Qingzi, Xin Che, and the other three women were teaching Hu Yinin and the other Heavenly Fox clansmen how to be competent servants. The Heavenly Fox clansmen were good at learning, and after a short period of training, they quickly accepted their new identities. It wouldn't be long before they were assigned to their posts. Macho hasn't returned yet. Are you going to look for her? The sacred concubine looked at Ning Qi. That cultivation maniac. Why would I look for her? When the time comes, she will naturally return. Ning Qi smiled and said. After not seeing her for a while, he didn't know what level Li Macho's cultivation had reached. Whoosh! A black light pierced through the air and headed straight for Ning Qi. Hu Cheng and the others immediately shouted. The old foxes reacted quickly and wanted to stop the black light. At the same time, they were secretly happy. They did not expect that they would have the chance to show off so soon. In the end, they suddenly howled miserably, and a layer of black fog covered their faces. Black lines slithered under their skin like spiritual snakes. The saint concubine had a serious look in her eyes, but she wasn't afraid, because Ning Qi was right next to her. The corners of Ning Qi's lips curled up slightly. He opened his mouth and swallowed the black light directly into his stomach. Then, he looked out of the hall with a faint smile. Li Macho slowly walked into the main hall, her body exuding a faint aura of the 9 tribulations. But at this moment, her expression was a little strange. This guy actually swallowed the 9 heaven silver needle that she had refined for many years? Even she could not help but admire such strength. Ning Qi flicked his finger, and a few strands of immortal qi entered the bodies of the old foxes. The poison in their bodies was instantly removed, and a layer of cold sweat appeared on their bodies. They looked at Li Macho with some fear. They had not expected that a random person would be Yuan Venerate. Macho, you have already broken through to the 9 tribulation creator level? The saint concubine's eyes moved slightly. Ning Qi noticed that she was a little envious. However, because of the child, the saint concubine could only suppress her cultivation. Otherwise, given Ning Qi's methods and talent, even if she was weaker than Li Macho, the difference would be very small. Li Macho nodded, glanced at Ning Qi, and then turned to leave. Cultivation maniac. Ning Qi could not help but complain. Li Macho seemed to have a kind of crazy obsession with cultivation. Even he could not compare to her in this regard. At that moment, Li Macho returned and said to Ning Qi, I have refined that 9 heaven silver needle for many years. It will be troublesome if I lose it. I will return it to you. If you come again, I will confiscate it. Ning-Chi smiled, opened his mouth, and spat out the 9 heaven soul silver needle, like a lightning bolt, shot towards Limacho. Limacho's eyes flashed, and her hands were covered with the power of creation, firmly trapping the 9 heaven soul silver needle. But because of the huge power it carried, Limacho had to turn a few times to get rid of it. When Limacho looked at Ning-Chi, she finally revealed a trace of shock. His methods were much stronger than hers. For a period of time, Ning-Chi did not cultivate, nor did he run around. He just accompanied the saint concubine and the other women in the palace. He could not remember how long it had been since he had this kind of leisurely life. It seemed that when he was in the Dragon Slayer Marquis Palace, he had such a leisurely time, but it did not last long. At that time, he had many enemies, and each one of them wanted to kill him. Unfortunately, today, some of these enemies had become friends and were cultivating in the War God Temple. Some of them had exhausted their lifespans and died, leaving only a handful of soil. Ning-Chi took some time to gather Niu Dezhuang, Luo Tianhua, Su Hongwen, and the other disciples he had accepted in the past. He also called Duan Yingjun, Dongfang Haojie, De Guzi, and the others. He taught them the ancestral demon golden body secret art and the 9 inner hidden arts. At the same time, he gave each of them a devil origin bead and supervised their cultivation. Devil chi tempering the body could greatly improve the body. Even if they couldn't go far on this path, it could still greatly improve their current strength. At least their ability to resist attacks would have a qualitative leap. In the future, they wouldn't die so easily. Soon, a few days before the ascension ceremony, Niu Dezhuang and the others succeeded in absorbing the demonic qi. Among them, Duan Yingjuan's mind was almost invaded by the demonic qi, but with Ning-Chi, it was easy to protect his mind. Ning-Chi gave each of them 10 heaven-grade demonic origin bead. With the speed at which they absorbed the demonic qi, these 10 demonic origin beads were enough for them to cultivate normally for thousands of years. Master, I feel that my strength has increased by a lot. Niu Dezhuang clenched his fists, feeling the endless power in his body. He could not help but exclaim. Compared to before he started cultivating the ancestral demon golden body secret art, his strength was at least 3 times greater. Moreover, he had not opened a single 9 inner hidden art. In the future, when he opened one, his strength would double again. De Guzi and the others nodded, their eyes showing a hint of joy. Little Ur and Zhuo Ling stood beside Ning-Chi. Seeing this, they hurriedly said, "Young master, we want it too. The Tai Chi diagrams on your bodies might conflict with the demonic Chi. It's best if you don't come into contact with it." Ning-Chi shook his head. The Tai Chi diagrams on the 2 girls' bodies were a bit mystical. Now, he felt that their cultivation techniques might be inextricably linked to the Celestial Clan's mainland, so not coming into contact with the demonic Qi was the best choice. This power seems to be very suitable for me? Chapter 2091. Enthronement. Ning-Chi slapped his forehead and smiled. I almost forgot about you. Limacho was probably the most comfortable with the demon Qi among the people present. The ceremony is about to begin. Let's wait until after the ceremony. Ning-Chi smiled. Limacho nodded. North Mystic Immortal Palace, in front of the Immortal Lord Palace. It was a huge square that was more than 100 miles wide and could accommodate tens of millions of people. Other than the 9 Serenities demonic lord and the other sect masters, celestial kings and perfected immortals, even the Dharma phase cultivators, eternal life realm cultivators, Dan battle realm cultivators, and Chi refinement realm cultivators were qualified to participate in the ceremony. However, ordinary cultivators could not come as they pleased. Only those who received an invitation from the North Mystic Immortal Palace could enter this place. Usually, those who received these invitations were all outstanding talents in their respective circles, but there was no lack of people who came from humble backgrounds but were extremely talented. No matter who it was, when they received these invitations, everyone fell into a state of ecstasy. Those who did not receive the invitation, whether they were from families or sects, were helpless. They could only head to the North Mystic Immortal City on their own, hoping to see if they could participate in Ning Qi's enthronement ceremony. After all, apart from being able to admire the North Mystic Immortal Lord from a close distance, there was another important reason for attending the enthronement ceremony: status. The two families were originally on the same level of power, and the cultivation of the family masters were also similar. If one of the families could participate in the enthronement ceremony, they would definitely be able to suppress the other family in the future. The other family would probably have to swallow their pride and not dare to resist. Who knew if the other party had met any powerful cultivators during the enthronement ceremony? There were so many powerful cultivators in the enthronement ceremony. It would be terrible if one of them was related to them. However, since the invitations were not registered, many clans spent a lot of money to buy an invitation. Some used the cultivation resources that their clans had accumulated for hundreds of years, and some used high-tier magical artifacts and elixirs. However, no one succeeded in buying an invitation. Moreover, because of the North Xian Celestial Palace, no one dared to forcefully snatch the invitations from the people who received the invitations. Hiss! Is that Dao Yen's Celestial Lord? Yes, it's him. I can't believe the once high and mighty Dao Yen's Celestial Lord ended up like this. Be careful. Just call him Dao Yen. He is no longer worthy of the 2 words Celestial Emperor. Not bad, not bad. It was a slip of the tongue. Today was Ning Qi's coronation ceremony. Cultivators with invitations walked into the North Mystic Immortal Palace with glowing faces. Every cultivator had to pass through the circular wooden array. Be it Masters of Creation, Transcendence cultivators, Eternal Life cultivators, Dando cultivators, or Qi refinement cultivators, they could all see the legendary Dao Yen Celestial Emperor with their own eyes. The Dao Yen Celestial Emperor's eyes were tightly shut as if he had fainted. On the other hand, Tenacious Donkey, Yuan Venerate Hanfei, and the others glared at this group of fellows angrily. They felt extremely humiliated when they saw a hint of schadenfreude and pity in the eyes of this group of ants. Look, the Netherworld Demon Sovereign and the others had arrived. The 9 Tribulations Masters of Creation are legendary figures to us in the past. I didn't expect to see so many of them this time. The 9 Tribulations Masters of Creation of the Central Continent should all be here today, right? Of course, who would dare to miss the North Mystic Celestial Emperor's coronation? The Palace Master of the Daluo Heavenly Melody Palace is here too. The 7 Old Immortals of the 7 Immortal Sword Sect are here too. Gasp! No matter what realm the cultivator was at, be it the Creator Realm, the Aspect Realm, or the Eternal Life Realm, they were all able to see the strongest existence in their own circle at this moment. This scene made them extremely excited. Sect Master, I didn't expect our Greedy Wolf sect to also receive an invitation from the North Mystic Immortal Palace. I can die without regrets now that I can witness this grand occasion with my own eyes. That must be because our sect master is so talented that even the North Mystic Immortal Palace knows about it. The elders and supreme disciples of the Greedy Wolf sect followed closely behind Ying Qingning as they watched the experts pass by them one by one. Although the Greedy Wolf sect was located very far from the Celestial Lord Temple, they were already completely satisfied with it. Ying Qingning looked in the direction of the Celestial Lord Temple with a complicated expression. He was slightly touched. He knew that he had received the invitation because of Ning Qi. Soon, the square in front of the Celestial Lord Temple was filled with cultivators. Apart from human cultivators, there were also many cultivators of different races. Regardless of their cultivation level, They all stood in the square quietly and looked in the direction of the Celestial Lord Temple. Dongfang Haojie and the others stood in 2 rows on both sides of the entrance of the Celestial Lord Temple with solemn expressions. As the time approached, everyone became more and more nervous. At this moment, Dao Yan's Celestial Lord slowly opened his eyes and looked at the Celestial Lord Temple with resentment. Not long after, 2 figures walked out. In an instant, a thunderous roar resounded in the sky. North Mystic Celestial Lord. North Mystic Celestial Lord. North Mystic Celestial Lord. The tsunami-like roars turned into waves of air that swept in all directions. The ground shook because of it. Behind Ning Qi and the sacred concubine were little 6, little Yu and Zhuo Ling. At this moment they were also very excited. Ning Qi gently raised his arm, and the voice suddenly disappeared. At that instant, regardless of whether it was the Azure Dragon mainland, the central continent, or the various remote places and countries, a blurry figure appeared above their heads. The cultivators who did not have the right to participate in the ascension ceremony immediately raised their heads to take a look. Ning Qi's voice was clearly heard by every cultivator. It was different from when Dao Yan's Celestial Lord was born. Ning Qi was less domineering, but more elegant. There was a faint smile on his face. North Mystic Celestial Lord? Dao Yan's Celestial Lord was killed? I didn't expect such a terrifying upheaval to happen in just a few thousand years. Apart from cultivators, many mortals could also clearly see the scene that was so detailed that it was as if it was real. Some of them had expressions of respect and knelt down to worship, some were shocked, and some were extremely excited. From this moment onward, even if they were very far away from North Mystic Celestial City and might never have the chance to come to North Mystic Celestial City, they knew that the existence that reigned above all beings was the North Mystic Celestial Lord. And from this day onward, the sacred concubine next to the North Mystic Celestial Lord had become the goddess that many mortals believed in. In just a few thousand years, he has already ascended to the throne? Chapter 2092. Profound azure mansion. At the foot of a certain barren mountain in the central continent, a figure seemed to have fused with the surrounding soil, and his eyes were tightly shut. Suddenly, he opened his eyes and looked up. His gaze pierced through the mud and rocks, landing on the illusory figure in the sky. Celestial Emperor? An ant-like game. Just as he was about to close his eyes to heal himself, he saw little 6 standing behind Ning Qi. He was stunned at first, but then he roared in anger. The mountain cracked as he flew towards the North Mystic Immortal City. His speed was extremely fast. In less than 5 minutes, he had arrived above the North Mystic Celestial City and stared at little 6. At this moment, Ning Qi's ascension ceremony was nearing its end. However, that figure directly rushed into the North Mystic Immortal Palace and stood on top of everyone's heads. Everyone was startled by this sudden turn of events, and they all looked at the figure with a strange expression on their faces. Who dared to disturb the North Mystic Immortal Emperor's ascension ceremony? If he wasn't causing trouble, they couldn't understand why someone would be so stupid as to fly so high at this time. Suddenly, boundless celestial spiritual energy swept out from this figure. Sensing this aura, all of the cultivators present felt their hearts tremble, and those with low cultivation coughed up blood on the spot. Even the 9 darkness demon sovereigns and the others felt like they were being crushed by a mountain, and even walking became very difficult. Oh? This person's aura. The third Ming prince, who was standing beside Yuan Venerate Devil Corpse and Yuan Venerate, had a strange look on his face when he saw this figure. He felt that this man was equivalent to a late-stage human demon. However, his aura was different from demonic qi. Instead, the third Ming prince looked at Ning Qi. He was sure that Ning Qi had an aura that was exactly the same as this man's. When little 6 saw this person, His expression changed slightly, and he was a little stunned. In the memories that he had inherited, this person should have died many years ago. Why would he suddenly appear in the Azure Dragon mainland? Terrifying! How terrifying! Much stronger than Dao Yin, immortal emperor. What's going on in the central continent? How can such existences appear one after another? The abysmal devil venerate and the others were shocked and couldn't believe what they were seeing. First, it was Ning Qi, then it was the third Ming prince, and finally, it was this guy they had never seen before. All of them were even more terrifying than the Dao Yin Celestial Emperor. However, decades ago, the Dao Yin Celestial Emperor had been recognized as the #1 powerhouse in the central mainland. Even if all the Yuan venerates joined forces, they wouldn't be a match for him. On the World Tree, the Dao Yin Celestial Emperor suddenly opened his eyes and stared at the voice. His eyes suddenly revealed a trace of joy. Immortal cultivators. It's an immortal cultivator. He knew that Little Six's clan had been hunted down by immortal cultivators, and in the end, they had been stranded in the central continent. Now that this immortal cultivator had suddenly appeared, his objective was self-evident. Ha ha! The heavens have not forsaken me, Dao Yin. Now that an immortal cultivator has appeared, Longzuan, Ning Beixian, both of you will definitely die. In the eyes of the Dao Yin Celestial Emperor, the immortal cultivators were invincible. He even dreamed of going to the immortal continent. Furthermore, this guy who had appeared before him had an aura that was many times more terrifying than his. In his opinion, his cultivation was definitely much stronger than Ning Qi's. Master, we're saved. Tenacious Donkey's eyes were also filled with joy. Although Yuan venerate Hanfei and Song Er didn't understand why the two of them were so happy, they were not stupid. They quickly looked at the figure with hopeful eyes. At the same time, cultivators in every corner of the world also saw this guy who had come with ill intentions. Is this person here to cause trouble for the North Xian Celestial Emperor's coronation ceremony because he doesn't like the North Xian Celestial Emperor? He's too bold. Who the hell is he? He's definitely not a nobody. Could there be someone in this world who is stronger than the North Xian Celestial Emperor? While the abysmal devil venerate and the others were stunned by this figure. Boss, this person is from the immortal continent. Little Six looked at Ning Qi solemnly and transmitted his voice. I can see that this is a living immortal. Ning Qi nodded with a smile and looked at this person curiously. The immortal qi on this person's body was much denser and purer than Ning Qi's. In addition, this person also had a sickly aura, which indicated that he had yet to fully recover from his injuries. After observing these details, Ning Qi looked at the other person's attributes. Profound Azure Mansion, Zhao Wuji level, perfected human immortal, severely injured, immortal race mystic art, shrinking ground, profound Azure sword art health points, 45 yuan. The immortals from the profound Azure Mansion were the ones who chased you, right? Ning Qi looked at Little Six. Little Six looked at Ning Qi in shock. He had never mentioned this to Ning Qi in detail, so how did Ning Qi know about the profound Azure Mansion? Ning Qi understood when he saw Little Six's expression. At this time, Zhao Wuji's aura had already scanned Little Six a few times and he finally couldn't help but laugh. Ha! I didn't expect the remnant of the Sky Dragon to finally show up. You must be the last Sky Dragon, right? As long as I kill you, I can report back to the profound Azure Mansion. His voice, under the influence of the celestial qi, spread across the entire area. It also passed through the shadows in the sky and into the ears of all the cultivators and mortals in the area. Profound Azure Mansion? What kind of force was that? Why had they never heard of it before? The Ninth Darkness Devil Venerate and the others were deeply shocked because they suddenly had a terrible guess. If this conjecture was true, then there would be another fierce battle today. Yuan Venerate Demonic Corpse, Yuan venerate Slayer Immortal, Dongfang Haojie, and the others had grave expressions on their faces. The other party had come with ill intentions, yet he had chosen this time to come. This clearly showed that he was not giving Ning Qi any face. How would Ning Qi maintain his reputation if he disrupted the coronation ceremony? Zhao Wuji, I remember that you were the weakest among that group of immortal race cultivators. I thought you were dead, but I didn't expect you to survive until now. Little Six sneered. His voice was loud and clear, and his body gradually emitted a trace of the Nine Tribulation Creator's aura. Based on this recovery speed, it wouldn't take long for Little Six to break through the shackles of the Nine Tribulation Creator and return to the human immortal realm. He felt that it was a pity. If Zhao Wuji had given him a little more time, he might have been able to kill this guy who was obviously injured. Chapter 2093. Chapter 2093. Chapter 2093. Let's go. Humph. Zhao Wuji snapped out of his reverie and stared at Little Six coldly. Your heavenly dragon tribe was indeed powerful in the past, but now your aura is no different from an ant. You're still a far cry from your ancestors. Today, I'll take your head as a tribute to my fallen comrades. As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of green light shot into the sky from Zhao Wuji's back, and then it split into two, and then into three. In an instant, an endless sword formation had appeared in the sky, and every single one of these green immortal swords caused others to tremble from the bottom of their hearts. In the next moment, tens of thousands of divine swords rained down on the North Mystic Immortal Palace. The cultivators below could only look at the scene in horror. They could not dodge at all because they were already locked down by the opponent's aura and suppressed. During this process, the surrounding divine swords kept merging with the divine sword in the center. Every time a divine sword was merged, the size of the divine sword would increase. In the end, there was only one divine sword left in everyone's sight. The divine sword was covered with complicated runes and was extremely huge, like a mountain. It's over. I can't believe I'm going to die here today. If I knew this would happen, I would have sold the invitation card. It's better than dying here for nothing. I shouldn't have come. I shouldn't have come today. Countless cultivators looked at the scene regretfully. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. At the same time, the other cultivators who saw the scene through the illusionary figures in the sky were gloating. They were glad that they did not get the invitation card. Otherwise, they would have died under the giant sword today. His third Prince Ming's eyes flickered with disdain. He did not make a move because he had already noticed Ning Qi's action. A saber radiance went up from the bottom to the top and collided with the divine sword. The crowd only heard a loud clang. Following that, the giant divine sword with a destructive aura was split in half. The saber radiance did not slow down and landed on Zhao Wuji, who was still in shock. A third of the health bar above Zhao Wuji's head was gone. Boom! The two halves of the giant sword fell to the ground and stabbed deep into the ground. The Netherworld Demonic Lord and the others looked at Ning Qi subconsciously. They realized that the aura that was suppressing them had disappeared. Then, the people of North Mystic Celestial City cheered again. North Mystic Celestial Lord. North Mystic Immortal Emperor. Everyone looked at Ning Qi with fanaticism in their eyes, especially those cultivators who thought they would die under this sword. Those who survived a great disaster were bound to have good fortune later on. They were the most excited. The Qingxian sword is broken. Zhao Wuji stared blankly at this scene. He didn't even notice that a part of his head had been cut off by the dragon-slaying saber. The Qingxian sword was a celestial artifact specially crafted by the profound Azure Mansion's blacksmith master. Its rank was much higher than the celestial artifacts in the outside world. It was also a mid-grade celestial artifact. Logically speaking, Such a celestial artifact would not be able to defeat anyone outside of the celestial realm, let alone be cut in half. Thinking of this, Zhao Wuji suddenly looked at the Dragon Slayer saber in Ning Qi's hand. There was only one explanation, and that was that the grade of this saber was far above the Qingxian sword. A trace of greed flashed through Zhao Wuji's eyes. In the next moment, he looked at Ning Qi with a grave expression. The saber was not an ordinary item. The person holding the saber also surprised him. To be able to break his Qingxian sword skill head-on, the opponent's cultivation must be quite high. How Dao Yen Immortal Emperor's eyes revealed a trace of deep disappointment. No matter how he thought about it, not only did this living immortal clan cultivator not kill Ning Qi with a single strike, Ning Qi had even broken the weapon in his hand? Was this really a celestial cultivator? You're not a remnant of the celestial dragon clan. Who are you? Zhao Wuji coldly stared at Ning Qi. But after a few breaths of time, his eyes suddenly filled with shock. He looked at Ning Qi with disbelief, because he could sense an extremely familiar aura coming from Ning Qi. You're also a celestial cultivator? Zhao Wuji cried out. Celestial clan? I guess so. Ning Qi smiled and nodded. The conversation between the two was heard by the crowd, and they looked at Ning Qi in disbelief. A celestial cultivator? The legendary immortal continent, the immortal world recorded in the ancient history books? Could it be that the previous rumors were true? Especially the cultivators of the Azure Dragon continent, such as Ying Qingning, they all knew that Ning Qi's father, Feng Jiuxian, had the bloodline of the celestial clan. However, this was only said by him. No one had ever heard of such a bloodline in the past, nor could they determine where the origin of the bloodline came from. Therefore, many cultivators only treated this bloodline as a joke. According to them, they could also claim to have the bloodline of the celestial clan, but who could prove it? However, the mysterious expert who had appeared out of nowhere had claimed that the North Mystic Celestial Lord was a cultivator of the immortal tribe. Many cultivators who had heard the rumor were now looking at Ning Qi in a completely different light. They finally realized how Ning Qi was able to achieve so much in such a short period of time. Since you're a celestial cultivator, you and I are of the same clan. Kill the remnant of the celestial dragon clan and bring his head back to the profound Azure Mansion to receive the reward. Zhao Wuji said in a deep voice. If you want to kill him, do it yourself. Ning Qi smiled. Zhao Wuji's expression changed slightly. I'm afraid you don't know who he offended, right? The person he offended is someone that even the profound Azure Mansion's Mansion Lord has to be respectful to. If you kill him today, it will be a meritorious deed. Little Six, capture him alive or kill him. Ning Qi looked at Little Six with a smile and said, ignoring Zhao Wuji's threat. Boss, he might have a way to return to the immortal realm. If so, it will save you a lot of effort. It's best to capture him alive. Little Six said with a serious face. Ning Qi's eyes moved slightly. He didn't think of this. If Zhao Wuji had a shortcut to return to the immortal realm, he wouldn't have to work so hard to water the purple void divine tree. If he wanted to wait for the purple void divine tree to grow to the point where it could bring him back to the immortal realm, it would take tens of thousands of years. Capture him alive? Seeing the two of them discussing whether to kill or capture him alive, Zhao Wuji's eyes flashed with anger. Since you don't know what to do, you'll what? Zhao Wuji turned around in shock. Ning Qi was less than a foot away from him. Go down. Chapter 2094. Out of time. The dust cloud dispersed. Zhao Wuji, who had been arrogant just a moment ago, was now lying on the ground with his eyes closed. The wound on his head was bleeding profusely, and his brain had almost turned into mush. Even a creator wouldn't be able to create a new brain for himself with such injuries. But for Zhao Wuji, who was already a peak human immortal, it wasn't enough to kill him. The blood bar above his head still had a thin sliver of blood left. All the cultivators who saw this gasped in their hearts. Then, their gazes fell on Ning Qi, and their eyes were filled with reverence. With a flash, Ning Qi appeared beside Zhao Wuji. According to his estimation of Zhao Wuji's injuries, this guy would probably be unconscious for tens to hundreds of years before waking up. Wang Zhong and the others wanted to bring Zhao Wuji away, but Ning Qi waved his hand. For an existence like Zhao Wuji, no matter how serious his injuries were, he wouldn't feel at ease letting Wang Zhong and the others look after him. Ning Qi glanced at the third prince. The third prince felt helpless. He slowly walked to Ning Qi's side and reached out, throwing Zhao Wuji into Diyu's hand. Diyu stared at this scene with his mouth agape. He felt his hands burning hot. Such an expert was being left to look after? If Zhao Wuji were to wake up, he would be in danger. Master, Diyu looked at the third Ming prince with flickering eyes. Are you scared? The third Ming prince glared. No, I'm not, Diyu hurriedly said. He then lowered his head to look at Zhao Wuji, gritted his teeth, and shut his mouth. He believed that if Zhao Wuji were to wake up, his master would be able to suppress him immediately. A small interlude happened today, and I'm sorry to have startled everyone. Ning Qi smiled and returned to the Saint Concubine's side, then smiled at the 9 Serenities' demonic sovereign and the others. The 9 Serenities' demonic sovereign and the others hurriedly expressed that it was fine. Their gazes toward Ning Qi became even more respectful. Many people secretly glanced at Zhao Wuji, then at Ning Qi. Although they didn't show anything on their faces, they felt that today's scene was the most shocking one they had ever seen. Zhao Wuji's origin was obvious. He must be a celestial from the celestial clan. Otherwise, how could he have such terrifying strength but not appear in front of everyone? They thought that Zhao Wuji had followed the traces of Ning Qi and Little Six, but they didn't know that Zhao Wuji had been healing in the central continent for countless years. Today, he came with injuries. Otherwise, with his full strength, it would not have been so easy for Ning Qi to suppress him. Ning Qi's coronation came to an end after he defeated Zhao Wuji. From this day onward, the faces of every living being in the world would be branded into the minds of 2 people, the North Mystic Immortal Emperor and the Frigid Sky Holy Mother. In the Celestial Emperor Temple, a cool aura entered Zhao Wuji's body. Not long after, he slowly woke up. At the instant he woke up, Zhao Wuji subconsciously wanted to stand up. At the same time, he looked around vigilantly. In the end, he realized that he couldn't move because there was a foot on his shoulder. You won't get up until I tell you to, right? The third Ming prince looked at Zhao Wuji with a faint smile. He had a strong urge to kill Zhao Wuji. He was a demon cultivator, while Zhao Wuji was an immortal cultivator. The 2 races had always been at odds. Although the third Ming prince had never experienced that era, he had read many ancient books. After confirming Zhao Wuji's identity, he was slightly surprised. It had been so many years since a demon cultivator was able to meet an immortal cultivator, but because of Ning Qi, he was able to meet the greatest enemy of the demon race in such a small world. You! Zhao Wuji's eyes flickered with a hint of anger. He realized that the foot on his shoulder was extremely strong, so strong that he was a little scared. The immortal race refined their spirit, while the demon race refined their physique. Besides, the third Ming prince's cultivation was similar to Zhao Wuji's when he was at his peak. It was only natural that Zhao Wuji was shocked by his strength. You what? The third Ming prince's eyes widened. That's enough. Ning Qi waved his hand calmly and approached Zhao Wuji. The third Ming prince took half a step back. Zhao Wuji was even more shocked after seeing this. He did not expect there to be 2 such powerful experts here, and one of them seemed to be the subordinate of the other. Where did this kid come from? Zhao Wuji's eyes flickered with doubt. Zhao Wuji, right? Ning Qi said with a smile. You, how do you know my name? Zhao Wuji stared at Ning Qi in astonishment. Even Little Six was startled, as he had no idea what Zhao Wuji's real name was. You want to know? I can tell you, but you have to tell me something first, Ning Qi said with a smile. What do you want from me? Zhao Wuji was startled. Did he have anything on him that could catch his eye? The way back to the land of the immortals. Ning Qi said with a smile. Your mission is destined to fail, but if you can tell me the way back to the land of the immortals, I can spare your life. The way back to the land of the immortals? Zhao Wuji was slightly startled. Then his eyes revealed a trace of pride as he sneered. So you don't even know the way back? Ha, just give up. I won't tell you. If you have the guts, then kill me today. Zhao Wuji laughed coldly. Looks like I'll have to raise that purple void tree. Ning Qi looked at Little Six and smiled. Purple void tree? Wait. Seeing that Ning Qi was about to kill him, Zhao Wuji quickly said, I can tell you the way back, but will you really spare my life? Zhao Wuji had planned to use this to bargain with Ning Qi, but when he heard the words purple void tree, he could no longer remain calm. Something like the purple void tree was extremely rare in the land of the immortals, but since Ning Qi mentioned it, Zhao Wuji did not dare to continue the gamble. If Ning Qi really had the purple void tree, he could raise it and use it to find the way back to the land of the immortals. In that case, his trump card would be useless. The corner of Ning Qi's lips curled up. I can spare your life, but I will take away your cultivation. Zhao Wuji's face darkened. Ning Qi's words made him believe Ning Qi. After all, if Ning Qi really wanted to lie to him, there was no need for him to say that last sentence. However, his cultivation was obtained through many years of hard work. If it was destroyed, he was afraid. I'll give you 10 breaths of time to think about it. Ning Qi smiled. Chapter 2095. Chapter 2095. Chapter 2095 starting with a stick. This is the star map given to me by the profound Azure Mansion. Although it's just a low-grade star map, it should be enough for you to return to the immortal land. Zhao Wuji flipped his palm over, revealing a round, compass-like object. Star map. Little Six's eyes lit up and he transmitted his voice to Ning Qi. Boss, with this star map, we can return to the immortal tribe's continent. There must be a record of the location of the Great Teleportation Formation. Ning Qi nodded and reached out to grab the star map. He then scanned it with his divine thoughts, and a vast star map appeared in his mind with a bang. There were all kinds of planets on it. Some were marked with names and detailed annotations, while some were just dots without any markings. At the same time, Ning Qi saw a faint white line. The end of this line was the central continent. Ning Qi's heart stirred and he saw the beginning of the route. The continent of the immortals. I've already given you the item. Can I go now? Zhao Wuji narrowed his eyes and said. Ning Qi smiled and nodded at Third Prince Ming. Immediately after, an incomparably mournful howl could be heard from the immortal Lord Palace. Dao Yan's celestial emperor, who was on the world tree, opened his eyes and stared in the direction of the immortal Lord Palace. Not long after, it saw Ning Qi carrying a weak guy in front of them. The tenacious donkey's heart thumped. It had a kind of ominous premonition. The person in Ning Qi's hand was clearly the celestial clan cultivator, but the aura on his body was also very weak. Just like the Dao Yan immortal emperor, his cultivation had been crippled. North Mystic Celestial Emperor, I was wrong. Please give me another chance. Kanga looked at Ning Qi in fear. As for the other cultivators of Kangar's sect, they had already fallen into deep despair. Ning Qi smiled and did not say anything. With a thought, logs rose from the ground and floated behind Ning Qi. Then, together with Ning Qi, they disappeared into the sky. This scene was witnessed by countless cultivators of the North Mystic Immortal City. They exchanged glances with each other in shock as they came to a realization. at the entrance to the immortal prison. Ever since Tao Yen Immortal Emperor was defeated, the 3 tribulation masters of creation who were originally guarding this place had long received the news and escaped. They were the direct subordinates of the Tao Yen Immortal Emperor. Currently, they were either being pursued by the 9 Hell Demon Sovereign and the others, or they had already been killed. However, because of the formation, even if the 3 guards weren't here, no living creature could approach this place. Faint roars could be heard coming from the pitch-black entrance of the immortal prison. Ning Beixian, even if I become a ghost, I won't let you go. One day, I will crawl out of the immortal prison and find you. The Tao Yen Immortal Emperor left a harsh sentence and was thrown into the entrance of the immortal prison by Ning Qi, followed by 10x. Yuan venerate Han Fei, Kanger, and all the cultivators of the Kanger sect. Zhao Wuji finally reacted after all of them had fallen into the immortal prison. He stared at Ning Qi and asked, "What is this place? Since you are an immortal clan cultivator, you must have heard of the great war of immortals and demons, right?" Ning Qi smiled. Great war of immortals and demons? Zhao Wuji's expression grew nervous as he looked at the immortal prison. When he sensed the aura inside, his eyes filled with shock. Impossible, the demon race continent has already been destroyed. The demon race continent has indeed been destroyed, but there are fragments left behind. This is a small fragment of the demon race continent. Ning Qi smiled. You want to throw me in? The celestial race will definitely be demonized by the demonic qi and lose their sanity. You are not keeping your word. Zhao Wuji looked at Ning Qi furiously with a hint of despair in his eyes. He hadn't expected Ning Qi to not let him go even after he had given him the star map. It's not that scary. If you are strong enough, it's still very easy to preserve your sanity. I have already kept my promise to you by not killing you. However, I won't let you take revenge on me so easily, right? Ning Qi said with a smile. You at least give me a magic tool. Zhao Wuji said angrily. Ning Qi was taken aback. He picked up a wooden stick from the ground and handed it to Zhao Wuji before throwing him into the entrance of the immortal prison. Damn it! Zhao Wuji's angry roar came from the depths of the immortal prison and then gradually disappeared. After doing all this, Ning Qi strengthened the original formation at the entrance of the immortal prison and left. When he returned to North Mystic Immortal City, he would definitely arrange for a few people to watch over this place to prevent the entrance of the immortal prison from being opened carelessly. Although he wasn't afraid of demonic creatures, ordinary cultivators and even mortals would definitely suffer heavy casualties. After returning to North Mystic Immortal City, Ning Qi mentioned the matter of guarding the immortal prison to Dongfang Haojie. He would take care of the rest. Then, Ning Qi called Third Prince Ming and Meng Tianshu and left North Mystic Immortal City together. Han Teng Ruins. Just like before, this place was still in ruins after so many years. After all, there was a passage to the Netherworld. Occasionally, the Netherworld Qi would sweep out, enough to kill ordinary cultivators below the Transcendence realm. Ordinary mortals wouldn't dare to live here. Compared to the first time Ning Qi came here, the Han Teng ruins looked even more desolate. What? You're going to the Netherworld? Third Prince Ming was shocked when he found out that Ning Qi was going to the Netherworld with Meng Tianshu and was going to bring him along. You have a problem with that? Ning Qi looked at the third prince and his eyes flickered. Why is this guy reacting so strongly? Rumor has it that my nether snake race lived in the Netherworld a long time ago. Then, something happened and we went to the demonic continent. However, this is only a legend that even my father doesn't believe. There is also no evidence to prove that my nether snake race originated from the Netherworld. The third Ming prince whispered with a hint of hesitation in his eyes. Now that he had a chance to enter the underworld, he could check if the legend was true. If it was true, then there must be other underworld snakes in the underworld. However, the underworld itself was a taboo. Even though he was at the full circle of the human devil realm, he was still innately afraid of the underworld. I've never heard of the nether snake race in the netherworld, Meng Tianshu said. You're staying in the first heaven of the netherworld. Maybe the nether snake race came from the second heaven? Ning Qi smiled and patted Third Prince Ming's shoulder. This is a good chance for you to find your ancestors. Let's go. Can I not go? Third Prince Ming looked at Ning Qi and asked. Of course not. Chapter 2096. Chapter 2096. The underworld, the entrance seems to have shrunk a lot. Soon, the three of them stood in front of a pitch-black hole. Due to the constant invasion of the underworld qi, the surroundings were barren and devoid of life. Compared to the hole that Ning Qi had seen before, this hole had shrunk by more than half. If it continued to shrink like this, it would probably disappear at some point in time. At that time, if Ning Qi still hadn't come out of the netherworld, he would have to spend another 3 million dragon-slaying crystals. Oh, if the netherworld was further from the central continent than the immortal prison, then even 3 million dragon-slaying crystals might not be enough. This entrance can last for at least 3,000 years. As long as we return within that time, there will be no problem. Meng Tianshu stepped forward and said. At this time, a stream of nether energy swept out from the cave. When it fell on Meng Tianshu, Ning Qi found his dantian glowed, and was immune to the attack of the nether energy. Meng Tianshu wasn't hurt at all. Ning Qi and the third Ming prince faced the nether energy head-on. When the nether energy fell on Ning Qi, it tried to drill into his body. However, Ning Qi shook his body and dispersed the nether energy. As for the third Ming prince, nothing happened. The nether energy brushed past him gently. The third Ming prince was stunned by the scene. The legend might be true. The Nether Snake clan might have originated from the underworld. The feeling of the underworld qi brushing past his body was as warm as a spring breeze. Sect leader Meng, you are in the body of a human now. How can you resist the underworld qi with your current cultivation? Ning Qi smiled. Meng Tianshu smiled and flipped his palm. A small black pagoda appeared in his palm. Ning Qi remembered this black pagoda clearly. It was the pagoda of Kungsu that was located in the Wang family. Ning Qi had used it to exchange for some information about the underworld. This pagoda of Kungsu was my personal underworld artifact. However, it was found by the mystic truth great sage and the others. It was not easy for me to take it away with me at that time. Thanks to the North Mystic Immortal Emperor, I was able to find it. With it, I can move freely in the underworld, even in the body of a human, Meng Tianshu smiled. Meng Tianshu paused for a moment and laughed bitterly. However, my current cultivation is only sufficient to utilize the Kuan Su pagoda. I won't have any combat strength in the netherworld, it's fine. Ning Qi smiled. With Meng Tianshu's cultivation, his battle prowess was negligible. Since he could protect himself from the nether aura, that was enough. Then, shall we go? Meng Tianshu glanced at Ning Qi and the third prince. Ning Qi nodded. With a wave of his hand, the two people in front of him were directly taken into his domain of creation. Then, Ning Qi stepped into the passageway leading to the netherworld. Stay in the hotel? Yes. How many? 3. 100 nether crystals. The ferocious-looking owner who had lost half of his head put away the nether crystals that Ning Qi handed over to him, and he immediately beamed with joy. He helped Ning Qi and the others clean a table, and asked them to sit down. After that, he ran to the kitchen to prepare dinner for them. There weren't many people in this inn. Apart from Ning Qi and the others, there were only a few other customers at the other tables. They sized up Ning Qi and the others with a strange look in their eyes. They seemed to have noticed that there was a slight difference between their appearance and theirs, but they couldn't pinpoint the difference. Then, they shook their heads and chatted among themselves, ignoring Ning Qi and the others. It had been half a month since Ning Qi entered the netherworld. This place was a little different from what he had imagined. Apart from the nether Qi in the air, the sun couldn't be seen even once every 10 to 15 days. Everything was dusky and no different from the central continent. Even these netherworld cultivators weren't as deformed as the evil Azura he had seen before. They looked similar to humans, but there were still some differences. Be it male or female cultivators, they all looked fiercer than the humans in the central continent. Ning Qi specifically asked Meng Tianshu, and only then did he know that the cultivators of the netherworld would only reveal their true forms when they went to various places to search for souls under the control of the heavenly Tao, and in the netherworld, this was their true form. Ning Qi guessed that this had something to do with the heavenly Tao of this place. If the netherworld cultivators left the netherworld temporarily, they would change into a different appearance. This appearance must have something to do with the heavenly Tao of this place. Or perhaps it was the only way to retrieve souls without anyone noticing. If this speculation was true, even Meng Tianshu was fooled. He thought that the true forms of the netherworld cultivators were imposed on the netherworld cultivators by the heavenly Tao to facilitate the retrieval of souls. This showed that the netherworld was indeed a special place. However, there was a flaw in this speculation, and that was the third Prince Ming. Either the Nether Snake Clan had nothing to do with the netherworld, or the Nether Snake Clan was not controlled by the heavenly Tao of this place, or the speculation was wrong. North Xian Celestial Emperor, the Samsara Temple opens once a month. However, if we want to go in and search for the whereabouts of a certain soul, we need to make some arrangements. Meng Tianshu transmitted his voice. Right now, the three of them were in the Samsara city. This was the center of the netherworld, which was equivalent to the North Xian Celestial City in the central continent. The current Emperor of Hell lived here. After Ning Qi arrived in the netherworld, he didn't cause any trouble and came straight here. How many nether crystals do you need? Ning Qi transmitted his voice. He had a few thousand nether crystals with him. They were looted from a few netherworld cultivators when he first arrived here. Those netherworld cultivators had intended to rob Ning Qi, but Ning Qi had taken advantage of them. There's a registrar of the Samsara Temple with the surname Azura. He's from the Azura clan and has the most power among the 9 registrars. He's also very greedy. If we can get him to agree, we can enter the Samsara Temple to search for Miss Wang Shui's soul. However, this person's cultivation is not low. He's at the late stage of the nether realm. I'm afraid he won't even look at us if we don't have at least 100,000 nether crystals. Meng Tianshu transmitted his voice. 100,000 nether crystals? Ning Qi's eyes flickered. He had thought of using force. With his cultivation, he could do whatever he wanted here. Even if Emperor of Hell attacked him, he wouldn't be afraid. However, Ning Qi didn't want to cause unnecessary trouble. If he couldn't find the whereabouts of Wang Shui's soul because of this, Ning Qi would blame himself. What do you think is the fastest way to collect 100,000 nether crystals? Ning Qi looked at Meng Tianshu. If it was alchemy, the netherworld cultivators might not be used to it. As for refining weapons, Ning Qi didn't know how to do that. He could only rely on Meng Tianshu, who used to be a local tyrant, to see if he had any way to collect 100,000 nether crystals in a short time. Lord Tsulua. Meng Tianshu hesitated and said. Chapter 2097. Chapter 2097. Chapter 2097 Meng Pe Supuan Luo was one of the 8 surnames in the first heaven of the underworld. There were 2 late-stage nether realm cultivators and 8 mid-stage nether realm cultivators in the clan. King Wan Luo was one of the 8. He presided over a region and held supreme power. The Wan Luo clan's influence spread across the major regions. There was also a cultivator from the Wan Luo clan in Samsara City, one of the two late-stage Nether Realm cultivators. King Wan Luo, Meng Tianshu's enemy, presided over the Luanhai region. That place used to be the territory of the Netherworld Dao Empire, but now it was replaced by King Wan Luo. On the way to the Netherworld Dao Empire, Meng Tianshu grew increasingly excited. With Ning Qi's speed, it didn't take long to get from Samsara City to the Luanhai region. When the three of them were about to reach the Luanhai region, a large group of underworld cultivators appeared in front of them. It seemed that an extremely powerful existence was traveling. It's the cultivators of the Wan Luo clan. Within the crowd, Meng Tianshu gnashed his teeth as he stared viciously at the group of cultivators. In the center of the group of cultivators, there was an incomparably huge palanquin being carried by 18 cultivators as it flew through the sky. Suddenly, the group of cultivators disappeared on the spot. Not only them, but the surrounding underworld cultivators also disappeared, leaving only Ning Qi and the other two. The third Ming prince looked at Ning Qi and Meng Tianshu. "Where are they?" Meng Tianshu said with a strange expression. "There must be a lot of people who died somewhere. They went to take their souls." As expected, the underworld cultivators take souls under the control of the rules of the heavenly Tao. "You don't have any freedom." Ning Qi smiled. Meng Tianshu nodded. "That's right. That's why all the underworld cultivators want to escape to the second heaven of the underworld. When I was still a prince, the rules of the heavenly Tao would send me out to take souls every 10 days to half a month. I would also be interrupted when I wanted to comprehend some cultivation method. What's the point of living like this?" The third Ming prince shuddered. Meng Tianshu smiled self-deprecatingly. "I was born this way. I'm used to it. Will they return to the same place after taking souls?" Ning Qi asked. "No, all the cultivators from the underworld who go there will appear in the Samsara temple as soon as they capture their souls," Meng Tianshu said. A trace of pity flashed in Ning Qi's eyes. These underworld cultivators were probably slaves under the heavenly Tao's rules. They would do whatever the heavenly Tao's rules ordered them to do. Compared to the underworld cultivators, apart from the huge gap in cultivation, the underworld cultivators were far from being comparable in terms of freedom. "Let's go. We're almost there." Ning Qi smiled. 10 days later. Luanhai Domain. After so many years, Meng Tianshu had once again returned to the place where he was born. However, everything had changed. Everything he was familiar with, whether it was objects or people, could no longer be seen. Strange buildings could be seen everywhere. Cultivators from the Swaira Civ clan constantly brushed past them. Their faces were filled with arrogance, and when their gazes fell upon Ning Qi and the other two cultivators, they could be seen with a hint of disdain. It was as if the Swaira Civ clan cultivators were the heavens, and the other cultivators were ants. In the past, this was the capital of the underworld Dao Empire. Now, it has become the temporary residence of King Wan Luo. Meng Tianshu gazed into the distance. At the end of the street there was an extremely luxurious building. "Let's go." Ning Qi smiled. Killing an underworld cultivator at the middle stage of the Nether Realm was the same as killing a demon cultivator at the middle stage of the human devil realm. For Ning Qi, it was easier than killing a chicken. "Have you heard? King Wan Luo's temper has become more and more irritable these years. A few days ago, several families were exterminated because they offended his servants. No wonder. A few years ago, King Wan Luo's favorite grandson went missing when he went out to take souls. He never came back. It's possible that he was killed in the process. King Wan Luo has become more irritable because of this. Not only his grandson, but several cultivators of the Swaira Civ clan have also failed to return because of the soul-taking. This kind of thing is very rare. King Wan Luo has several cases of this happening. How can he not be angry? Indeed, this is very strange. We underworld cultivators have always been successful when we go out to collect souls. Those souls were crying and begging us to spare their lives. Ordinary cultivators can't even detect our presence. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be such danger. I think it's possible that they were killed after they returned to the Samsara temple. Then it's very likely that it was done by King Wanluo's enemies. Forget it, let's not talk about this. Today is King Wanluo's birthday. Let's go and watch the fun. I heard that even the most beautiful ice glass demon of the Luan Sea will be there. Let's have a bowl of Meng Po's soup. This is a rare treasure bestowed by the upper world to Emperor Ming. If it wasn't for King Wanluo's birthday, he wouldn't be so generous. Tisk tsk. If we can really drink a bowl of Meng Po's soup, we'll be able to get twice the results with half the effort in our future cultivation. He died while taking souls? Ning Qi's eyes flickered. He had killed many underworld cultivators. Could it be that one of them was King Wanluo's grandson? This thought flashed through his mind as Ning Qi was immediately attracted to the soup of Meng Po. Did the Netherworld really have something that only existed in legends on Earth? Were they the same thing? Sect leader Meng, have you tasted the Meng Po soup? Ning Qi looked at Meng Tianshu. Meng Tianshu shook his head. I've never tasted such a precious thing. It's said that the Meng Po's soup was bestowed by the second heaven of the underworld to Emperor Ming. It has the effect of eliminating inner demons and speeding up one's cultivation. I'm afraid only those who have tasted it know how effective it is. Ning Qi nodded. This effect was somewhat different from the legends on Earth. The Meng Po's soup was said to make ghosts forget their past lives so that they could be reincarnated. However, legends were legends after all, so it was understandable that there were some discrepancies. As for whether the two were the same thing, Ning Qi was 70 to 80% sure that they were. He had seen many legendary existences and items. There was an alchemy furnace in his dimensional bag that was known as the Taishang Laojuan soup, so Ning Qi was not surprised. Perhaps the underworld and the underworld are the same place. The 10 Yama kings should also exist, right? Ning Qi's eyes revealed a hint of a smile. This world was getting more and more interesting. Was reincarnation really possible? Perhaps he could find out the truth this time. Lady Ice Glaze Demon has arrived. The number 1 beauty is here. Quick, look. Gasp. She really is the number 1 beauty. She really lives up to her reputation. She's so beautiful. Ning Qi and the other two sat in a corner. King Wanluo's birthday was open to the public. Anyone could attend as long as there was a seat. The number 1 beauty? Chapter 2098. Chapter 2098. Chapter 2098. Wrong person. The so-called number 1 beauty was very ordinary in Ning Qi's eyes. The only difference was that the ferocity on her face was a little lacking. In the central continent, she would at most be considered average. The third Ming prince was fond of snakes, so he had no interest in this beauty. He swept the food on the table out of boredom, ignoring the angry glares from his fellow cultivators. North Mystic Immortal Emperor, the standards of the underworld's beauties are a little different from those in the central mainland. Meng Tianshu transmitted his voice with a hint of mockery on his lips. If it was in the past, he would definitely think that the ice glass demon was the number 1 beauty. No wonder so many cultivators are looking at us along the way. In their eyes, we're the most handsome, right? Ning Qi smiled. Meng Tianshu's eyes revealed a trace of a smile when he heard this. The more relaxed Ning Qi appeared, the more confident Meng Tianshu became. He had originally been a little nervous because he was about to meet the Qurul King, but now he gradually relaxed. The ice glaze demon wore a faint, arrogant smile on her face as she looked around. Originally, she had intended to sit at the very front of the table. With her status, it was not a problem for her to sit at the same table as King Kurluo. However, when she saw Ning Qi's group, her expression changed slightly. Then, under the astonished gazes of the crowd, she walked towards Ning Qi's group. Come on, come on. The ice-glazed demon is coming for us. The nether plane cultivators sitting at the same table as Ning Qi's team of 3 looked at each other excitedly. Next, they turned to look at the glass ice demon. At the same time, their hearts were pounding. Why was the ice-glazed demon walking towards them? Could it be that she had fallen for one of them? With that in mind, the netherworld cultivators felt their blood boil, and they stood up in excitement. Young master, you look so familiar. Have we met before? The ice-glazed demon smiled at Ning Qi. When the cultivators who were sitting at the same table as Ning Qi saw this, their faces immediately darkened and they stared at Ning Qi. The underworld cultivators nearby also revealed looks of jealousy. At that moment, several geniuses from the Swirl clan happened to see this scene. They exchanged glances and then walked towards Ning Qi's group with gloomy expressions. Is it familiar? Miss, you have mistaken me for someone else. This is my first time here. Ning Qi smiled. Really? A hint of suspicion flashed across the ice-glass Moi's eyes. At this moment, the swirling Luo clan's geniuses had already arrived in front of Ning Qi and the others. Miss Bingley, long time no see. The prodigy from the curly Luo clan, who was walking at the front, exuded an early nether realm aura. Among the thousands of netherworld realm cultivators present, his cultivation was already considered outstanding. Most of the netherworld realm cultivators' cultivation was similar to Meng Tianxu's, or equivalent to 6 or 7 tribulation masters of creation, or 7 or 8 tribulation masters of creation. Young Master Haiyang, it has indeed been a long time. How is King Wan Luo doing? The glazed ice demon Yi turned to look at the prodigy from the swirling Luo clan, and a bright smile appeared on its face. Haiyang Wan Luo smiled and nodded. Father's body is still very strong. With that, his eyes fell on Ning Qi, Meng Tianxu, and the third Ming prince, and he felt a little ashamed. How could these 3 be so good-looking? Thinking of this, Hai Shuangluo's eyes flashed with a fierce light, and with a smile that didn't seem like a smile, he said, Lady Bingley, is there someone you know here? May I know who you are? Can you introduce us? It seems I mistook you for someone else. Young Master Haiyang, let's go sit over there. The ice-glass demon Yi glanced at Ning Qi, then smiled and said, You mistook me for someone else? That's fine too. Hai Shuangluo smiled and looked down at Ning Qi's group of 3. He snorted disdainfully in his heart. So what if they were good-looking? In the end, they could only sit in this corner to attend his father's birthday. Soon, the glazed ice demon Yi arrived at Hai Shuangluo's table. The underworld cultivators sitting next to Ning Qi's group of 3 immediately whispered to each other, glancing at Ning Qi from time to time. About an hour later, several batches of powerful underworld cultivators arrived. Their seats were also very close to the front. As for the seats in the corners, they were basically all occupied. After the seats in the front were filled, the door of this place slowly closed. Dong! Dong! The ground began to tremble slightly. Everyone looked in the same direction. Not long after, an incomparably huge figure surrounded by a large group of servant girls appeared in front of everyone. This was a netherworld cultivator who was 6 feet tall and 6 feet wide. His face was covered in layers of fat, and the ground trembled with every step he took. The strength of his qi and blood was almost comparable to that of a mid-stage human demon cultivator. This meant that this person must have cultivated some kind of special body tempering technique. Meng Tianxu's eyes immediately flashed with a fierce light when he saw this figure. It's him? Ning Qi smiled. It's him, King Shuangluo. Meng Tianxu gritted his teeth and his eyes were filled with hatred. When he thought about how King Shuangluo had single-handedly destroyed the entire netherworld Dao Empire, and how everyone related to him had basically died at his hands, Meng Tianxu wanted to personally kill King Shuangluo. Unfortunately, his cultivation was far inferior to King Shuangluo's. King Shuangluo sat down on his own huge throne. His bean-sized eyes flickered coldly as he indifferently swept his gaze across the crowd. Everyone hurriedly rose to their feet to congratulate him. "Father, this is a gift from your son. I hope you like it." Haiyang Shuangluo and the others rose to their feet and took out their gift. Each of them was displayed in front of the crowd, causing many of the netherworld cultivators to gasp. If any of these gifts were to fall into their hands, it would be enough to change their fates. After that, it was time for King Shuangluo's grandchildren to present their gifts, followed by the leaders or representatives of the major forces that were under King Shuangluo's command. Most of them were married to King Shuangluo. After receiving these gifts, the complexion of the Wan Luo king gradually became much better. In a hoarse voice he said, "Thank you all for attending my birthday celebration today. I believe that everyone has heard about what happened to my Wan Luo clan in the past few years. Today I would like to say something here. No matter who it is, if they want to secretly plot against me, the Wan Luo king, the only fate that awaits them is death. I, the Wan Luo king, have spent my entire life on the battlefield, and have made illustrious contributions to the Wan Luo clan. It is only because of this that I have obtained my current status and status. I have exchanged my blood for this. No one can use some petty tricks to replace me." The crowd looked at each other when they heard this, then responded in unison with strange expressions. A smile immediately appeared on King Shuangluo's face. Chapter 2099. Why does it hurt so much? What are you standing there for? Hurry up and take out your gift. Seeing that Ning Qi's group did not move, and that even King Wan Luo was looking in their direction, the netherworld cultivators sitting at the same table immediately grew anxious. These three people, don't tell me they want to freeload Granny Meng's soup for free? Don't they know that Meng Po's soup can only be served after the gifts have been delivered? He, they don't even have a congratulatory gift, and yet they dare to come here to eat and drink for free? I don't think these three will be able to leave today. It is a pity for their good looks. Earlier, Miss Bingley seemed to recognize one of them. From the looks of it now, she has indeed recognized the wrong person. How could someone whom Miss Bingley knows not take out a congratulatory gift? The Nether Realm cultivators who were seated at the front cast gloating looks at Ning Qi's team of three. Like Ning Qi's team of three, the Nether Realm cultivators seated in the corner revealed a hint of rage. They wanted nothing more than to beat Ning Qi's team of three out on the spot. These three fellows had utterly humiliated them. The doubt in the ice-glass demon Ye's eyes gradually dissipated. She looked at Ning Qi with a trace of indifference. It was obvious that she had recognized the wrong person. This fellow looked extremely similar to that person. However, with that person's strength, how could he not even take out a congratulatory gift from the Scroll King? Haiyang Wan Luo looked at the ice-glass demon Yi with a smile that was not a smile, then his gaze landed on Ning Qi. As the atmosphere became more and more awkward, he finally got up and walked over to Ning Qi. He looked down at the three of them and said with a faint smile, "The three of you, did you forget to bring your gifts today?" Ning Qi smiled and shook his head. "No." "Then why?" Haiyang Wan Luo said with a smile. "We didn't plan to bring any gifts at all." Ning Qi laughed. Haiyang Tsulua's expression changed slightly. When the underworld cultivators heard Ning Qi's words, they sucked in a breath of cold air. Even the early Nether Realm underworld cultivators sitting near King Tsulua were shocked by Ning Qi's word. This guy. Does he not want to live anymore? They didn't bring any congratulatory gifts, yet they still spoke so confidently. Did they think that the Quril King had a good temper? Everyone instinctively turned to look at Curly Luo King. Sure enough, they saw that Curly Luo King's expression had darkened significantly. His mung bean-like eyes flickered with a cold glint. No gifts? The smile on Haiyang Wanluo's face gradually faded, and the aura around his body became even more somber. The nearby Wanluo cultivators also stood up and walked over to Ning Qi's side, surrounding Ning Qi's group of 3. When the underworld cultivators at the same table saw this, their hearts filled with regret. They wanted to leave, but they found that the Wanluo cultivators had no intention of giving way. It was obvious that they had mistaken them for the 3 fellows. Everyone, we're not with them. Please don't misunderstand, we've brought gifts. Yeah. No matter how they tried to explain, Haiyang Wanluo and the others had no intention of moving aside. Their faces immediately turned ashen as they glared hatefully at Ning Qi and the others. You didn't bring any gifts. According to the rules of my Raluo clan, you should be executed. However, today is my father's birthday, so it's not appropriate to kill. How about this, the 3 of you break your own legs and crawl out of here. Then, I'll forget about what happened today. Haiyang Wanluo said with a smile. Break my own legs? Meng Tianshu's lips curled up slightly. His eyes flickered with a hint of mockery. In his eyes, the guy before him was already a dead man. Ning Qi and the others did not speak. In the eyes of the crowd, they were obviously too scared to even speak. In the end, Meng Tianshu suddenly rose to his feet and looked at King Wanluo. King Wanluo, do you still remember the Underworld Dao Empire? Underworld Dao Empire? Many of the underworld cultivators present were shocked when they heard the name. Didn't the land they were standing on once belong to the Underworld Dao Empire? However, the empire had been destroyed by King Wanluo a long time ago. Everyone felt strange when they heard the name again, and they all looked at Meng Tianshu. Remnants of the Underworld Dao Empire? Haiyang Wanluo and the others immediately wore solemn expressions. The way they looked at Ning Qi and the others changed slightly. Step aside. King Wanluo rose to his feet and said calmly. Haiyang Wanluo and the others respectfully stepped aside. King Juanluo's gaze landed on Meng Tianshu, and he suddenly burst out laughing. Ha ha ha. So it's you, the fish that escaped the net. I didn't expect you to change your appearance over the years. Even I couldn't recognize your aura. The crowd gasped in their hearts when they saw King Juanluo's reaction, and stared at Meng Tianshu in astonishment. Is this guy really a remnant of the Underworld Dao Empire? Why didn't he hide himself, and instead came here to seek his death? Strange, there must be something fishy going on. Are they here to seek revenge from King Wanluo? King Wanluo, you killed millions of cultivators of the Underworld Dao Empire. I've returned today to seek revenge from you. Meng Tianshu stared coldly at King Wanluo. Seek revenge from me? King Tsulua stared at Meng Tianshu in astonishment before bursting into wild laughter. The fat all over his body jiggled like waves. The cultivators of the Tsulua tribe and the leaders of the major forces under King Tsulua also laughed heartily. They looked at Meng Tianshu with a hint of deep mockery in their eyes. Seeking revenge from King Wanluo? Not to mention that King Wanluo was one of the 8 great experts of the Wanluo tribe, there were at least 10 early Netherrealm experts here. There was no need for King Wanluo to act personally. Any one of them would be enough to suppress this ant-like existence, right? You based on what? Ha! King Wanluo pointed at Meng Tianshu, laughing so hard that he couldn't breathe. His eyes were full of mockery. North Mystic Immortal Emperor, this fat pig has more than 1,000,000 nether crystals. Kill him today, and you'll have enough nether crystals. Meng Tianshu respectfully saluted Ning Qi. Everyone was slightly startled, and King Wanluo was also startled. He then looked at Ning Qi. So this person was the leader? Are you a helper invited by the remnant of the Underworld Dao Empire? Tell me which clan you're from, and let me have a good laugh. King Wanluo laughed. You want to have a good laugh? The corners of Ning Qi's mouth curved slightly. Before King Wanluo could speak, he glanced at the third Ming prince. The third Ming prince nodded and moved slightly, appearing directly in front of King Wanluo. Seeing this, King Wanluo revealed a trace of surprise. His opponent's speed was so fast? However, King Wanluo did not panic. His physical strength far surpassed those at the same level. Even if his opponent was fast, what could he do to him? Even a cultivator at the Middle Nether Realm would not be able to hurt him. Bang! Chapter 2100. Both of them. King Tsulua let out a miserable cry. Ning Qi could clearly see that the life bar above his head had been reduced to a sliver after taking the third prince's punch. Even Meng Tianshu could easily kill King Tsulua now. After letting out a cry of agony, the curly Luo king's fleshy body collapsed onto the third Ming prince's fist as if he had lost all his strength. The crowd stood rooted to the spot as if they had been petrified upon seeing this. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. Was that really King Tsulua's miserable cry? How could he cry like a pig being slaughtered after being punched by someone? Father! Haiyang Tsulua and the others cried out in surprise. Their eyes were filled with disbelief as they stared at the third prince with a hint of fear. As for the cultivators of King Tsulua's grandson's generation, they did not dare to make a sound as they stared blankly at the third prince. The leaders of the factions that were loyal to King Tsulua wore solemn expressions. They were not looking at the third prince but at Ning Qi. It was obvious that the third prince had only attacked because of Ning Qi's instructions. How strong was his master if his subordinate was able to instantly incapacitate King Tsulua? What's going on? The ice-glazed demon subconsciously rose to its feet and looked at the third prince before looking at Ning Qi with a doubtful expression. The tables had been turned in an instant. King Tsulua, who had been so confident of his victory just a moment ago, was now on the verge of collapsing to his opponent's fist. Sect leader Meng, you can avenge yourself now. Ning Qi said with a smile. Meng Tianshu's eyes flickered with joy. With a flicker, he instantly appeared in front of King Tsulua. King Tsulua raised his head with all his might after hearing Ning Qi's words and glared at Meng Tianshu in shock and anger. What are you doing? Don't forget that I have the Tsulua clan behind me. If you kill me today, my patriarch will never forgive you. King Tsulua said in a hoarse voice. Your patriarch? Your ancestor is even inferior to an ant before the immortal emperor. If he really dares to come and give his life away, then your Wan Luo clan will probably be swallowed up by the other 7 great clans, and it might even be annihilated just like my netherworld Dao Empire. Meng Tianshu's lips curled up slightly as he looked pitifully at King Tsulua. How can he be so confident? Who is the celestial emperor he mentioned? From his tone, it seems like he doesn't even put the Luo clan in his eyes. The surrounding netherworld cultivators were even more shocked. The Wan Luo king was dumbfounded when he heard Meng Tianshu's words. He couldn't wrap his head around it. There was actually someone in the underworld who wasn't afraid of his Wan Luo family? Senior, this person is only a remnant of the netherworld Dao Empire. There is no need for you to become enemies with our Wan Luo clan because of him. Haiyang Xuanluo walked up to the third prince and cupped his fists. Do you think I look like someone who can make decisions? The third Ming prince sneered. Haiyang Wanluo was slightly taken aback, and then looked at Ning Qi in disbelief. At this moment, Ning Qi had a faint smile on his face, as if he was not paying attention to this place at all. Instead, he was using his chopsticks to pick and choose from the delicacies on the table, eating with relish. A trace of hesitation flashed in Haiyang Wanluo's eyes. He walked up to Ning Qi and bowed respectfully. Senior, I have offended you just now. Please forgive me. I hope that Senior will spare my father for the sake of my Wan Luo family. Sect leader Meng, we don't have much time. Let's finish this quickly. Ning Qi said lightly. Haiyang Wanluo's expression turned incomparably ugly. In the next moment, Meng Tianshu had already summoned the Kuan Su pagoda. The tip of the pagoda was like a sword, and it directly pierced through the top of the Wan Luo King's head. The Wan Luo King stared at Meng Tianshu with unwillingness and despair. The vitality in his eyes gradually faded. In the next moment, his physical body suddenly turned into a black mist that dissipated between the heavens and the earth, leaving not a single trace behind. Ning Qi wasn't surprised by this. This was because he had killed many underworld cultivators before. He already knew that underworld cultivators had no souls when they died. Moreover, they would turn into black mist as if they had been devoured by the heavenly Tao of this place. From this, it could be seen that underworld cultivators were truly slaves. Wan Luo King is dead? The surrounding underworld cultivators felt as if a storm was set off in their hearts. A dignified middle nether realm existence, one of the 8 great masters of the Wan Luo clan, Wan Luo King, had been killed just like that? And the one who killed him was actually a remnant of the Netherworld Tao Empire? An ant that wasn't even at the Nether Realm? Father! Grandfather! Wan Luo King's sons and grandsons cried out in alarm as they stared at this scene in shock and horror. We've finally had our revenge. Meng Tianshu's eyes revealed a trace of sorrow. He looked up at the sky as if he wanted to comfort his parents, brothers, and all the underworld cultivators of the Netherworld Tao Empire who had died at the hands of Wan Luo King. The third Ming prince sneered and reached out. All the treasures that had been piled on the main table immediately fell into his hand. Everyone subconsciously hugged their pockets tightly when they saw this. Hand over all your nether crystals. The third Ming prince looked at Haiyang Juluo and smiled. Nether crystals? Haiyang Juluo and the others were slightly taken aback. Then, they looked at each other with ugly expressions. Although they wanted nothing more than to kill the third Ming prince and Meng Tianshu to avenge Wan Luo King, their opponent's strength was too terrifying. Even Wan Luo King, who was at the middle nether realm, couldn't last a single move against him. As early nether realm existences, they had no chance of winning. After hesitating for a few seconds, Haiyang Juluo and the others took out all their nether crystals and handed them over to the third Ming prince. That's it. Looking at the scattered nether crystals in front of him, there were only a few thousand of them. The third Ming prince immediately revealed a cold smile. This is all the nether crystals we have, Haiyang Juluo said through gritted teeth. Wan Luo King has been robbing people for years. He has at least 1 million nether crystals. North Mystic Immortal Emperor, they clearly don't plan on handing over the nether crystals. Why don't we just kill them all? Meng Tianshu looked at Ning Qi and cupped his hands. North Mystic Immortal Emperor? So the Immortal Emperor that this guy mentioned was him? Subconsciously, Ice Glass Devil Yi and the others looked over at Ning Qi with a hint of shock in their eyes. All of them had gone through this title in their hearts, but there wasn't a single clue. In Ghost World, there wasn't anyone who was called an Immortal Emperor. This remnant. Haiyang Juluo and the others hated Meng Tianshu to the core. When they saw a thoughtful look on Ning Qi's face, Haiyang Juluo's heart skipped a beat. He quickly took a step forward and said, Senior, we really don't know where my father's nether crystals are hidden. However, as long as you give us some time, we will be able to gather 1 million nether crystals. Kill them all, Ning Qi said calmly. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.